This is first class. There must be some mistake. Catherine Brooks' voice carried across the premium cabin with deliberate volume, designed to draw attention rather than resolve a concern. Her French manicured fingers, each nail perfectly shaped and polished with Dior Gel Shine number 108, tapped impatiently against the Italian leather armrest as she glared at the three young black boys settling into seats 2A through 2C. Flight attendant Maria Rodriguez approached with the practiced smile of someone accustomed to diffusing tension before takeoff, her premium Airways Platinum Wings pin catching the cabin lighting. "There's no mistake, ma'am. These young gentlemen are confirmed first-class passengers on our flight to Atlanta today." Catherine's posture stiffened. Her limited edition Hermes della Cavalleria scarf adjusted with unnecessary precision as her gaze sharpened. "Flight attendant, these children cannot possibly belong in premium class." The way she emphasized children carried the same inflection someone might use for vermin. The triplets, three identical 8-year-old boys with close-cropped hair and matching navy Burberry sweaters, carefully arranged spelling flashcards on their tray tables, seemingly oblivious to Catherine's growing indignation. "I paid $4,237.86 for this ticket specifically to avoid disturbances." Catherine continued, her voice rising just enough to ensure nearby passengers could hear her displeasure. "There are plenty of seats in economy where they'd be more appropriate." Maria's professional smile remained firmly in place, though something hardened in her eyes, the imperceptible shift of someone who's handled 3,847 difficult passengers over a 12-year career. "All passengers who have purchased first-class tickets are entitled to their assigned seats, ma'am. These young gentlemen have valid boarding passes for seats 2A through 2C. Catherine's laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. "Valid, I'd like to see those. There's obviously been some sort of diversity initiative mistake. First class isn't a social experiment." One of the boys, the one seated closest to the window, glanced up momentarily, his eyes registering Catherine's hostility before returning to his flashcards. The protective way his brother shifted closer to him didn't go unnoticed by the cabin crew. "I'm happy to address any concerns about the service," Maria replied, "but I can assure you all our passengers are seated correctly. The boys are preparing for a national spelling competition, and they'll be quite focused on their studies during the flight." "Spelling competition?" Catherine repeated with unconcealed skepticism. "How quaint." She turned her attention to her phone, the latest iPhone 17 Pro Max in rose gold with a custom Bottega Veneta case, dismissing Maria with a flick of her wrist. "These children don't belong here. Someone needs to fix this situation before takeoff." The three boys exchanged glances, but remained silent, their small fingers organizing and reorganizing spelling cards with practiced precision. The cabin air felt suddenly heavier as other first-class passengers became uncomfortably aware of the tension building in seat 1D. What none of them realized, especially not Catherine Brooks with her $87.3 million trust fund and 5-generation entitlement, was that those three quiet boys in their matching navy sweaters were about to become central figures in a confrontation that would destroy her privileged world in spectacular fashion. That her casual cruelty was about to collide with a mother's fierce protection and a CEO's uncompromising authority in precisely 42 minutes. But to understand how we got to this explosive moment at 30,000 feet, we need to go back to the beginning. Have you ever witnessed someone's prejudice destroy their life in real time? Have you ever seen justice delivered so perfectly that it feels like the universe itself stepped in to restore balance? This isn't just another viral confrontation to my name. This is what happens when entitlement meets its perfect match. Welcome back to Black and Bruised Stories, where we document moments of injustice transformed into powerful lessons. If you're new here, you've just joined a community dedicated to truth, justice, and survival. Show some love by clicking the like and subscribe button. Before we dive deeper into this story, drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. This is the story of a single slap that would expose the ugly face of modern prejudice and trigger a reckoning that would change multiple lives forever. A story that started with a spelling competition and ended with a lesson in justice that no one would ever forget. Catherine Brooks had woken up that Tuesday morning in her Central Park penthouse, surrounded by the kind of luxury that old money could provide. The 12,783 square foot apartment, valued at $14.7 million after the recent market correction, featured floor-to-ceiling windows that offered panoramic views of Manhattan, a daily reminder of her place above the common masses. At 48, she had never worked a day in her life, never struggled for anything, never been told that she couldn't have exactly what she wanted when she wanted it. Her morning routine was precise and predictable. Jamaican Blue Mountain coffee, $147 per pound, served in hand-painted Limoges Ancienne in manufacture Royal China. Breakfast prepared by her housekeeper, Lucia, and a careful review of her travel itinerary on her custom monogrammed Smithson agenda. "Lucia," she called, her voice echoing through the Calcutta marble-floored dining room. "My Cartier Panther rewatch seems to be running 2.5 minutes slow. Please have Philippe look at it when he returns from walking Madison." The purebred Pomeranian, a $17,500 acquisition from a Westminster-winning bloodline, was enjoying his morning constitutional with the dog walker, another luxury service Catherine considered a basic necessity. The housekeeper nodded silently. After 7 years working for Catherine, she knew better than to engage beyond absolute necessity. The last household assistant who'd attempted casual conversation had been dismissed within 48 hours. Catherine scrolled through her phone, her expression souring as she encountered a Fortune article about corporate diversity initiatives. "Ridiculous," she muttered, skimming the piece about airlines implementing inclusion training. What happened to qualifications? Merit standards. Now it's all about checking identity boxes. Her $87.3 million trust fund, established by her grandfather, who had built his fortune in manufacturing during the post-war boom, had insulated her from economic reality her entire life. The Brooks family name opened doors, secured reservations at booked-solid restaurants, and ensured that Catherine never experienced the indignities of ordinary existence. Today's flight to Atlanta was supposed to be peaceful, civilized, surrounded by what she considered her people, other wealthy passengers who understood the natural order of society. She had chosen seat 1D deliberately, wanting both aisle access and prime position for pre-takeoff champagne service. She'd specifically requested a glass of Dom Perignon P2 2003 during booking, a vintage that retailed at $449 per bottle. "Lucia, ensure my Himalaya Niloticus Crocodile Birkin 30 is properly packed with my travel essentials," Catherine instructed, referring to the $487,000 handbag she considered casual travel wear. "And call Richard to confirm he's arranged the Bentley Mulsanne service for airport pickup in Atlanta. Last time they sent a standard Mercedes, and I refused to repeat that experience." Catherine's worldview was simple and toxic. There were people like her at the top, and there were people of color who existed to serve those at the top. When she encountered Black people, she expected them to be cleaning her house, preparing her meals, or attending to her needs. The idea that they might occupy the same premium spaces she paid to enjoy wasn't just offensive to her. It was an assault on everything she believed about how the world should work. As her driver navigated through Manhattan traffic in the custom-ordered Range Rover Autobiography LWB $178,500 base, with $42,760 in additional features, Catherine continued scrolling through social media, becoming increasingly agitated by posts about diversity initiatives and inclusion programs. "The world is changing too fast," she muttered to herself. "People are forgetting their place." She was about to discover that some people had never forgotten their place. They had simply refused to accept the limitations that others tried to impose on them. Olivia Reynolds had built an empire in the clouds, but her greatest victory wasn't in the boardroom. It was sleeping peacefully in their beds that Tuesday morning. At 42, she was the chief executive officer of Premium Airways, commanding a fleet of 823 aircraft and managing 68,473 employees across 6 continents. She had transformed a struggling regional carrier into a global powerhouse, quadrupling its market share and revolutionizing the industry's approach to customer service. Her Harvard MBA and Stanford PhD in organizational psychology had equipped her with both the technical knowledge and human insight to lead effectively in a traditionally white male-dominated industry. But none of her professional achievements, not the features in Forbes' Reynolds Revolution, How One CEO Transformed Aviation, or the Ernst & Young Global Executive of the Year award, meant as much to her as the 3 8-year-old boys who called her mom. Elijah, Daniel, and Michael Reynolds had been 5 years and 7 months in the making. 5 years of fertility treatments, Failed IVF attempts 7 rounds, each costing $23,475. Heartbreak, and hope that sometimes felt impossible to maintain. The doctors had warned that her chances of conceiving were declining with each failed attempt, that perhaps it was time to consider other options. But Olivia had refused to give up, and when the ultrasound finally showed 3 healthy heartbeats, she made herself a promise that would define every parenting decision she would ever make. No matter how demanding her career became, she would never miss a moment that truly mattered to her boys. "Rise and shine, champions," Olivia called, entering the boys' bedroom where matching spacecraft-themed restoration hardware lamps cast a gentle glow. "Today's the big day." 3 identical faces emerged from under their covers, sleep giving way to excitement as they remembered what day it was. The National Elementary Spelling Championship awaited them in Atlanta, the culmination of months of dedicated preparation. "Mom, I dreamed I spelled pharmacopoeia correctly," Daniel said, reaching for his custom-made titanium glasses on the nightstand. "That's because you did spell it correctly yesterday," Elijah replied, already out of bed and reaching for his carefully laid-out clothes. 3 times in a row, with the Greek root etymology perfectly cited. Michael, still cocooned in his blankets, smiled sleepily. "We're going to do great. All of us. I can feel it." Olivia watched her sons with a mixture of pride and wonder. Her spacious corner office in the Premium Airways headquarters with its commanding view of the Manhattan skyline. Her regular appearances in business publications. Her $7.3 million compensation package. None of it compared to the miracle of these 3 boys and the boundless potential they represented. "Breakfast in 15 minutes, she announced. "We've got a big day ahead. Your bags are already packed, but double-check your study materials before we leave." As CEO of Premium Airways, Olivia could have sent the corporate Gulfstream G700 $75 million for her sons. She could have arranged private transportation and VIP treatment at every step. But she had deliberately booked them on a regular commercial flight, albeit in first class, because she wanted them to experience the world as it was, not wrapped in the protective bubble of exceptional privilege. When her executive assistant had informed her of an emergency board meeting scheduled for the same morning as their flight to Atlanta, Olivia hadn't hesitated for even a moment. She moved the meeting to the Premium Airways first-class lounge at Kennedy Airport. The message to her executives was clear. Her children's dreams came first, and anyone who had a problem with that could find another job in an industry where female CEOs constituted just 6.8% of leadership. As she helped Michael select a sweater that matched his brother's, Olivia's phone buzzed with a message from her chief financial officer. "Q2 projections need your sign-off before the 10:15 meeting. Preliminary data shows 17.3% growth over last year." "I'll review them in the car," she replied, already mentally shifting into CEO mode while remaining physically present for her boys. The triplets had grown into remarkable children, each with his own personality and strengths. Olivia made sure the world recognized them as individuals, not just identical parts of a matched set. Mom, Daniel called from the bathroom. "Do you think my anxiety will be okay during the competition?" Olivia joined him, kneeling to meet his eyes directly. "You've been practicing your 4-7-8 breathing technique, right? And you'll have your toolkit with you." He nodded, but uncertainty lingered in his expression. "Daniel, remember what Dr. Patterson always says, your sensitivity is your superpower. It's what helps you notice details others miss. It's what makes you such a thoughtful brother and an exceptional speller." The moment mattered more than any board meeting ever could. These quiet morning conversations were building the foundation of who her sons would become, and no career achievement could ever compete with that responsibility. As they headed downstairs for breakfast, Olivia Reynolds was already mentally preparing for the day ahead: executive leadership, maternal guidance, and the delicate balance between the two that she had perfected over 8 years of raising triplets while running an airline. What she couldn't possibly anticipate was that by sunset, she would be calling upon every ounce of both her executive authority and maternal protection to address an act of cruelty that would transform not just her family, but an entire industry. Part 2, the triplets and their journey. Elijah Reynolds was born 3 minutes and 42 seconds before his brothers, a fact he considered proof of his responsibility as the eldest. Even at 8 years old, he carried himself with the natural authority of someone accustomed to looking out for others. His Ella Bean Super Pack book bag was always meticulously organized. His homework completed 47 hours before deadline. His brother's lunch money carefully counted each morning before school, $5.75 exactly, with an extra dollar hidden in a secret pocket for emergencies. Mom, I've double-checked our spelling lists and organized them by difficulty, Elijah announced over breakfast, spreading his color-coded mead flashcards across the Calicotta quartz countertop. I've put the most challenging words in the red section so we can review them on the plane. There are 47 words with silent letters that Daniel needs extra practice on. Olivia smiled at her firstborn's methodical approach, recognizing her own systematic strategy to challenges. Perfect, Elijah. And what about your competition outfit? Did you pack your lucky blue Thomas pink tie? Packed and wrapped in acid-free tissue paper so it won't wrinkle, he confirmed, buttering his multigrain toast with the same precision he applied to everything in life. Exactly 3.5 grams of Irish Kerrygold butter, spread to precisely 2 millimeters from each edge. Daniel, the middle triplet by exactly 2 minutes and 17 seconds, approached problems differently. Where Elijah relied on systems and organization, Daniel possessed an almost supernatural memory, eidetic recall that allowed him to visualize any word he'd ever seen. Once he saw a word in print, it remained photographed in his mind, available for instant retrieval during competitions. This gift came with challenges. However, by Daniel's heightened perception extended to emotions and tensions around him, making him exquisitely sensitive to conflict and negative energy. Mom, what if the judges don't like me? Daniel asked, his spoon hovering above his untouched, purely Elizabeth ancient grain oatmeal. What if I forget everything when I get on stage? What if my anxiety gets so bad I can't speak? Olivia reached across the table, covering his small hand with her own. Daniel, remember what Dr. Patterson told you about anxious thoughts. They're just visitors, not facts, he recited, the therapeutic mantra clearly familiar after 14 sessions with the child psychologist. And I don't have to believe everything my brain tells me. Exactly, you're wrong. And what happens when you're actually at the microphone in competitions? A small smile formed. Everything gets quiet and I can see the words in my head, like they're printed on a page with all the syllables highlighted in different colors. Every single time, Olivia confirmed. Your mind knows what to do when it matters most. That's why you qualified in the top 0.7% nationally. Michael, younger than Daniel by just 37 seconds, was already halfway through his breakfast, his natural optimism evident in his easy smile and the way he hummed the chorus of Walking on Sunshine between bites of organic scrambled eggs. Where Elijah led and Daniel thought, Michael connected. He was the emotional heart of the family, the one who could make his brothers laugh when they were sad, who celebrated others' victories as enthusiastically as his own, who saw the good in everyone he met and believed that the world was fundamentally a kind place. We're going to do amazing, Michael declared with absolute certainty. Daniel knows more words than anyone in the competition, and Elijah has the best strategy, and I'm going to cheer so loud when you guys win that they'll hear me back in Manhattan. Olivia watched her youngest son's enthusiasm with a mixture of pride and gentle concern. His open heart was his greatest gift and his greatest vulnerability in a world that didn't always reward optimism. And what about your own preparation? Michael, you've qualified too. Remember you placed third in the regional finals with phosphorescence. Michael shrugged, his smile never dimming. I'm just happy we all get to go together. That's the best part. Besides, I'm better at making up new words than spelling old ones. The triplets had transformed their dining room into a spelling headquarters over the past 4 months, complete with 3 quartet whiteboards, 1,427 flashcards, and etymology charts covering every available vertical surface. They had developed their own system of studying together, quizzing each other on increasingly difficult words, and cheering for each other's successes with elaborate handshakes that involved 7 distinct movements. Elijah had memorized over 2,113 words, focusing on Latin and Greek roots to help him decode unfamiliar terms. Daniel had developed his photographic recall to the point where he could visualize words he'd seen only once, even months earlier, a gift that sometimes overwhelmed him with information but made him nearly unbeatable in competition. Michael had become the team's encourager, celebrating every correct spelling with his signature triple snap double clap and offering comfort when someone missed a word with his standard phrase, "That just means you're one step closer to getting it perfect." Their preparation had paid off spectacularly when all three qualified for nationals. 500 children had competed in the state finals, and only the top three from each age group earned the right to compete at the national level. The odds against three brothers from the same family all qualifying were astronomical, approximately 0.0042%, according to Elijah's calculations. But the Reynolds boys had defied those odds together. The night before their flight, the boys had stayed up later than usual, doing their final review. Pneumono-ultramicroscopic silico-volcanoconiosis, Daniel had recited, spelling the 45-letter word without hesitation while simultaneously organizing his anxiety management tools. Stress ball density, medium firm, fidget spinner ceramic bearings, 3.7-minute spin time, and the laminated card with breathing exercises that his mother had created using Affinity Designer software. Show off, Elijah had teased, though his pride in his brother was evident in the way he'd added a gold star sticker to their progress chart. Now try floxinosinihilipilification without the etymology hints. That's not even a real medical condition anymore, Michael had added, yawning. But it sure sounds impressive when Daniel says it in 2.3 seconds flat. They had packed their Celie Blackwing 602 pencils, half the pressure, twice the speed, their study materials. And most importantly for Daniel, his anxiety management toolkit that included his stress ball, fidget spinner, and the laminated card with breathing exercises that his mother had made for him using premium 10 mil thermal laminating sheets. Tomorrow, we're going to show everyone what the Reynolds boys can do, Elijah had declared before they went to bed, setting 3 identical Timex kids' watches to the same minute. We're going to make Mom proud, Daniel had added, clutching his stress ball with a grip pressure of approximately 4.7 psi. And we're going to have fun doing it, Michael had finished, their 3-part harmony of aspirations complete as it had been since their first day of kindergarten. Now, as they finished breakfast and gathered their things for the journey to Atlanta, none of them could have imagined the dramatic confrontation that awaited them, or how their presence in first class would trigger a chain of events that would transform both their lives and an entire industry. Sophia Jackson, Olivia's executive assistant for the past 4 years, arrived precisely at 8:30 a.m. to escort the triplets to the airport. At 31 when Sophia had mastered the art of anticipating her boss's needs before they were expressed, a skill that had made her indispensable to one of the most powerful women in the aviation industry. Her Tory Burch Kira satchel contained 3 identical folders with the boys' travel documents, each color-coded to match their personalities, blue for Elijah's reliability, green for Daniel's thoughtfulness, and orange for Michael's exuberance. "Good morning, Dr. Reynolds," Sophia greeted, her professional demeanor softening as she turned to the boys. "And good morning, champions ready for your big adventure." The triplets greeted her with varying degrees of enthusiasm, Elijah with a formal handshake and direct eye contact, Daniel with a shy wave and half smile, and Michael with an exuberant hug that nearly knocked her Kate Spade Margot glasses askew. "Their boarding passes are in the front pocket of each backpack," Olivia explained, handing Sophia a Louis Vuitton Port Documents Voyage leather portfolio. "The emergency contact information, medical authorizations, and competition schedules are all in here. I've arranged for the Premium Airways Special Services team to meet you at the Terminal 5 executive entrance." Sophia nodded, mentally cataloging the information with the efficiency that had earned her a 23.4% raise during her last performance review. "And you'll join them before boarding. I'll be there." The board meeting is scheduled for 10:15 in the airport lounge, which gives me plenty of time to get the boys settled on the plane before takeoff at 11:40. Olivia knelt to address her sons directly. "Remember, Sophia will get you checked in and through security. I'll meet you at the gate before boarding." "Mom, we know the drill," Elijah said with the serious expression he often wore when taking charge. "We've flown 17 times before." 18, Daniel corrected automatically. "You're forgetting our connection through Denver last summer, when Flight 1732 was delayed due to weather patterns and we spent 4 hours and 37 minutes in the United Club Lounge." "That doesn't count as a separate flight," Elijah argued. "It was the same journey with a single reservation locator." Michael interrupted the budding debate with characteristic diplomacy. "Mom, we'll be perfect gentlemen and make you proud. Promise." We'll even use our napkins without being reminded. Olivia smiled, pulling all three into a quick embrace. You always make me proud. Always. The Premium Airways terminal at Kennedy Airport operated differently from other airlines. As the boys passed through the dedicated first-class security lane, uniformed staff greeted them by name. Their biometric profiles automatically registered in the VIP system. Welcome, young Mr. Reynolds, the security director said, bowing slightly as though addressing visiting royalty. Your dedicated boarding lane is prepared, and your mother's executive lounge is ready for the board meeting. The temperature has been set to 72.3 degrees, precisely as Dr. Reynolds prefers. What the boys didn't fully understand, though they were beginning to, was that their mother's position made them minor celebrities within the Premium Airways ecosystem. Every employee recognized the CEO's children, not just from their identical appearances, but from the countless photographs in Olivia's office and the company newsletters that occasionally featured their achievements. The monthly Premium Perspectives had dedicated a full spread to their regional spelling championship victory, complete with professional portraits by Annie Leibovitz during her airline branding shoot. The special treatment wasn't due to Olivia's demands. In fact, she deliberately downplayed their connection to her role, wanting her sons to develop genuine humility. Rather, it was the staff's natural response to encountering the children of the woman who determined their corporate culture, policies, and ultimately, their livelihoods. As they approached the first-class lounge, Sophia checked her Michael Kors Darcy watch. We have 47 minutes before boarding. Would you like to review your spelling words or have a snack before your mother arrives? Both. All three answered simultaneously, then laughed at their perfect synchronization, a phenomenon that occurred 7.4 times per day on average. According to Elijah's statistical tracking, inside the lounge, Premium passengers looked up with mild curiosity as the three identical boys in matching navy Burberry sweaters entered with their adult escort. Most returned to their devices and conversations, but a few watched longer, perhaps recognizing the Reynolds triplets from media coverage of their mother's groundbreaking leadership or the recent Wall Street Journal feature on the next generation of corporate America. Sophia guided them to a private corner of the lounge, arranging spelling materials on a low-no coffee table while ordering their favorite snacks from an attentive server, organic apple slices with almond butter for Elijah, gluten-free blueberry muffins for Daniel, and cheddar goldfish crackers for Michael, them, one processed food Olivia allowed as an occasional treat. As the boys settled into their practice routine, Sophia stepped aside to confirm final details with the flight crew. The CEO's sons will be in seats 2A through 2C, she informed the lead flight attendant, Maria Rodriguez. Dr. Reynolds will board with them, but will disembark before takeoff to attend a board meeting. The boys will fly unaccompanied to Atlanta. Maria nodded, making notes in the flight manifest on her Premium Airways iPad Pro. We'll ensure they have everything they need. Will there be any special requirements during the flight? Daniel, you can identify him by his titanium frames with a slightly thicker left temple, experiences occasional anxiety. He has management techniques and tools in his backpack. Just be aware in case he seems uncomfortable. His triggers include unexpected loud noises and confrontational situations. Understood. I'll brief the first-class cabin crew. We'll have James Taylor assigned to their section. He has training in supporting neurodivergent passengers. What neither woman could anticipate was that the greatest threat to Daniel's anxiety wouldn't come from the pressure of a competition or the stress of flying, but from the entitled passenger in seat 1D who was, at that very moment, informing the check-in staff that her Himalaya Niloticus crocodile Birkin 30 required its own overhead compartment and that she expected the Dom Perignon P2 2003 to be properly chilled to exactly 47.3 F before boarding. The boarding process for Premium Airways Flight 823 to Atlanta began with the customary announcements for passengers requiring special assistance, followed by the invitation for first-class passengers to board at their leisure. Catherine Brooks strode toward the gate with the confidence of someone who had never been told to wait her turn. She presented her boarding pass with barely a glance at the gate agent, her attention already focused on the premium cabin that awaited her. "Good morning, Ms. Brooks," the agent greeted, scanning her ticket. "Welcome to Premium Airways. You'll be in seat 1D today. We've noted your beverage preference for pre-departure service." Catherine nodded absently, her gaze falling on the three black boys standing nearby with their escort. Are those children boarding first class? She asked, not bothering to lower her voice. Yes, ma'am. The Reynolds triplets are in our premium cabin today. Something flickered across Catherine's face. Displeasure mingled with disbelief. Standards certainly have changed. I remember when premium was actually premium. The triplets boarded ahead of her, their navy Burberry sweaters and identical backpacks forming a perfect procession down the jet bridge. Catherine followed several paces behind, her Jimmy Choo Romy 100 designer heels clicking against the floor with sharp, irritated rhythm. Inside the aircraft, Maria Rodriguez greeted each passenger with practiced warmth. Welcome aboard, young gentlemen. Seats 2A through 2C are just to your right. May I offer you some fresh-pressed apple juice before takeoff? We've sourced it from a sustainable orchard in the Hudson Valley. The boys settled into their assigned seats with the confidence of experienced travelers, stowing their backpacks beneath the seats in front of them. Elijah took the aisle seat, positioning himself as the protective barrier between his brothers and the rest of the cabin. Daniel took the center, immediately arranging his spelling materials on the tray table in perfect symmetry. Michael claimed the window, his natural curiosity drawing him to the view of ground operations below, where a Cobus 3000 was delivering another group of passengers to a neighboring gate. When Catherine boarded moments later, her reaction was immediate and visceral. Her eyes narrowed at the sight of the 3 black children occupying first-class seats, their presence an affront to her segregated worldview. Good morning, Ms. Brooks, Maria greeted. Seat 1D is right here on the aisle. May I take your Burberry Kensington trench coat? Catherine ignored the offer, her attention fixed on the triplets. There must be some mistake, she said loudly. Those children are in first class. Maria's smile remained firmly in place, though something hardened in her eyes, a micro-expression that lasted precisely 0.43 seconds. Yes, ma'am, the Reynolds brothers are confirmed first-class passengers on today's flight. But they're children, Catherine persisted, her voice carrying through the cabin. Unaccompanied children. In the $487.86 cabin, Premium Airways welcomes travelers of all ages in all cabins. Ma'am, the boys are experienced flyers and will be well looked after by our crew. Our young VIP program ensures appropriate supervision. Catherine's lips thinned to a tight line as she reluctantly took her seat, arranging her Himalaya Niloticus crocodile Birkin 30 prominently on the empty seat beside her, until a flight attendant politely informed her it needed to be stowed for takeoff. As other first-class passengers boarded, most offered friendly smiles to the triplets, perhaps impressed by their quiet, well-mannered presence. Several recognized them as spelling champions from local news coverage. Though none made the connection to their famous mother, the boys had inherited her maiden name rather than their father's to maintain privacy. Catherine spent the next 20 minutes making her displeasure known through pointed sighs and muttered comments about appropriate environments for children and the decline of premium service. She made a show of accepting pre-departure champagne, emphasizing the adult nature of the first-class experience by loudly asking the vintage year and commenting on the insufficient effervescence of the Dom Pérignon P2 2003. The triplets, meanwhile, remained focused on their spelling preparation, largely oblivious to Catherine's growing irritation. They had encountered prejudice before, the subtle and not-so-subtle ways some adults communicated that they didn't belong in certain spaces. Their mother had prepared them for these encounters, teaching them that their dignity wasn't determined by others' perceptions. Hey, Michael whispered, nudging Daniel. That lady keeps staring at us. She's looked over exactly 17 times in the last 4 minutes. Daniel glanced up briefly, his anxiety already sensing the hostility directed their way. Just ignore her. Mom says some people are just unhappy with themselves and project that unhappiness onto others. Elijah positioned himself slightly more upright, his protective instincts activating. Focus on your words, he instructed his brothers quietly. Nothing else matters right now. We have 84 minutes until departure to review the final list. As the final preparations for departure continued, Catherine made a call to her husband, her voice deliberately audible. Richard, you won't believe the state of first class these days. 3 unattended children right behind me. The airline should really have age restrictions for premium cabins. Next, they'll be allowing pets in Rimowa carry-ons. What Catherine couldn't know was that her complaints were being noted by the cabin crew, who had already identified her as a potential problem passenger. Maria made a discreet note in the cabin management system, a practice implemented by none other than Olivia Reynolds to track and address passenger behavior concerns before they escalated. The system, developed at a cost of $12.7 million, had reduced serious in-flight incidents by 73.4% since implementation. The quiet before the storm settled over the first-class cabin, Catherine scrolling through social media with obvious displeasure, the triplets arranging and rearranging their spelling cards with focused determination, the cabin crew moving efficiently through pre-departure checks. And somewhere in the Premium Airways first-class lounge, Olivia Reynolds was preparing to board the aircraft to see her son settled before her board meeting, completely unaware of the confrontation building around her children, or the dramatic intervention she would soon be called upon to make. Just before the final boarding call, Daniel Reynolds began to feel the familiar tightening in his chest, the precursor to anxiety that he'd learned to recognize through 14 sessions with Dr. Patterson. The upcoming competition, the unfamiliar surroundings, and the hostile energy radiating from the woman in seat 1D were combining into a perfect storm of stress triggers. "Elijah," he whispered, reaching for his brother's sleeve. "I need my kit." Elijah immediately recognized the signs, the 2.7% increase in Daniel's blinking rate, the slight pallor beneath his warm brown skin. "Under your seat, right side pocket of your backpack, between your iPad mini and your emergency snack pouch." Daniel retrieved the small Mont Blanc zippered pouch containing his anxiety management tools, items carefully selected by his therapist to provide comfort and grounding during stressful situations. He removed the stress ball, a soft sphere filled with premium-grade microbeads that made a gentle sound when squeezed. As Daniel began his self-soothing techniques, rhythmic squeezing of the ball combined with controlled 4-7-8 breathing, Catherine's attention locked onto him like a heat-seeking missile calibrated to detect any behavior that didn't conform to her narrow definition of propriety. "What is that incessant noise?" she demanded, turning around to glare at the boys. "Is he playing with some kind of toy? This isn't Chuck E. Cheese." Maria appeared almost instantly, her radar for potential conflicts well-honed after 15 years in premium cabins. "Is everything all right here?" "That child is making distracting noises," Catherine complained. "This is a premium cabin, not a playground. I paid $227.86 for tranquility." Daniel froze, his anxiety immediately spiking at being the center of negative attention. The stress ball fell silent in his suddenly rigid grip. "Young Mr. Reynolds is using a therapeutic tool," Maria explained with deliberate professionalism. "It's a medically recommended anxiety management device, similar to ones used by many of our executive passengers during transatlantic flights." Anxiety. Catherine's tone dripped with skepticism. "At his age, more likely poor discipline. When I was growing up, children weren't coddled with therapeutic tools for basic behavioral expectations." Michael's normally cheerful expression darkened. "My brother has anxiety. It's a real thing. Dr. Patterson at Columbia Presbyterian diagnosed it." "Children should be seen and not heard," Catherine replied coldly, "especially in spaces meant for adults. Your generation's parents have forgotten basic etiquette." Elijah shifted forward, placing himself more firmly between Catherine and his brothers. "We're sorry if we disturbed you, ma'am. We'll be quieter." The intercom announced a 20-minute delay due to air traffic control restrictions over the eastern seaboard, and Catherine's irritation visibly increased. "Wonderful. Now I'm trapped here even longer in this deteriorating environment." The announcement triggered additional activity from the cabin crew, who began offering passengers additional refreshments during the delay. James Taylor, the second first-class cabin attendant, approached the triplets with a tray of juice options. "Gentlemen, would you like something to drink while we wait?" he offered kindly. "We have fresh-pressed apple, organic orange, or cucumber mint water." "Yes, please," Michael answered for all three, his natural friendliness resurfacing. "Apple juice for me and Elijah, and water for Daniel because he says apple juice makes his throat sticky before spelling. The natural sugars create a 27% increase in vocal cord adhesion, according to his research." James smiled at the detailed explanation. "Excellent choices. And perhaps some Madagascar vanilla shortbread to go with those drinks. They pair wonderfully with both options." Catherine watched this exchange with mounting displeasure, the preferential treatment of the children adding to her sense of grievance. In her mind, first class was being degraded by their presence, her exclusive domain invaded by those she considered beneath her station. As the delay extended and Daniel's anxiety continued to build, he began employing another coping technique, quiet self-talk and finger tapping. "I can do this. I know these words," he whispered to himself, rhythmically tapping his index finger against his thumb, a calming gesture his therapist had taught him that stimulated the vagus nerve and helped regulate his nervous system. Catherine's patience had completely evaporated after 30 minutes of delay. The soft, rhythmic tapping from the seat behind her became the focal point of her mounting frustration. "Stop. That tapping," she enunciated each word like a separate sentence, turning to glare directly at Daniel. The boy froze mid-tap, his anxiety immediately spiking. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he stammered, reaching for his stress ball. "And now you're rummaging through bags." Catherine's voice rose sharply. "What are you looking for? What exactly are you doing back there, searching for something to take that doesn't belong to you?" Daniel's hands trembled as he tried to explain. "It's my anxiety kit." "I need my anxiety kit," Catherine scoffed, making air quotes around the words with her French manicured fingers. "In my day, children weren't coddled with special kits for bad behavior. They were taught proper manners at Chapin and Dalton, not diagnosed with trendy disorders." Maria appeared almost instantly, professional training overriding her personal reaction to Catherine's increasing hostility. "Ms. Brooks, perhaps I can get you something to make your wait more comfortable. Another glass of champagne, perhaps the Krug Grande Cuvée E169 Me edition this time." "What would make me comfortable is not having disruptive children in premium class," Catherine replied loudly. "This is precisely why there should be age restrictions in first class. The 4,237 on $86 cabin should be adult only, like certain resorts." Several nearby passengers were now openly watching the interaction, their expressions ranging from discomfort to disapproval, though it wasn't clear whether that disapproval was directed at Catherine or the triplets. What was clear, however, was that a confrontation was brewing, one that would soon explode beyond anyone's expectations and trigger consequences that would reverberate far beyond Premium Airways Flight 823, Part 3. The incident. The tension in the first-class cabin ratcheted higher with each passing minute of the delay. Catherine's displeasure had evolved from passive-aggressive sighs to outright hostility, her gaze repeatedly returning to the triplets like a predator, assessing prey. "Do your parents know you're in the wrong section?" she finally asked directly, turning fully in her seat to face the boys. The question hung in the air for a moment before Elijah responded with careful politeness. "We're in the correct seats, ma'am. 2A through 2C. "That's not what I asked," Catherine pressed, her voice taking on the condescending tone adults sometimes use when they believe children are being deliberately obtuse. "Does your mother know you're in first class instead of economy where children belong? Or did someone at the airline mistakenly upgrade you as part of some misguided diversity initiative?" Michael piped up, his natural openness not yet recognizing the danger in engaging with Catherine. "Our mom flies first class all the time." She says, "I'm sure she does," Catherine interrupted with a dismissive laugh. "And I'm sure she works very hard as a teacher-nurse flight attendant getting buddy passes." The subtle racism in her assumption wasn't lost on Elijah, whose expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "Our mother is not here," Catherine finished for him, triumph in her voice, "which means you three are unaccompanied minors who have clearly been seated incorrectly. I've been flying Premium Airways since before you were born. Founding member status, actually, and I know their policies explicitly discourage unaccompanied minors in premium cabins." Several nearby passengers shifted uncomfortably, the conversation taking an ugly turn that violated the unspoken social contract of first-class travel. Across the aisle, Marcus Bennett, a 41-year-old white executive in a Tom Ford O'Connor suit, frowned as he observed the interaction. Maria Rodriguez approached with professional efficiency. "Is there a problem I can help with?" "Yes," Catherine responded immediately. "These children are unaccompanied and disruptive. They should be moved to a more appropriate section. I've paid $4,237.86 for a peaceful premium experience." Ma'am, these passengers are properly ticketed for first class. If you're experiencing discomfort, I'd be happy to see if we can accommodate you in another seat. We have one vacancy in 3B. Catherine's face flushed with indignation. The precisely applied Clé de Peau boat foundation $85 per ounce, suddenly insufficient to mask her anger. Me, I'm in the correct seat. They're the ones who don't understand etiquette or appropriate behavior. Daniel shrank further into his seat, his hands visibly trembling as he tried to disappear into the Italian leather. Michael looked confused by the hostility being directed at them, while Elijah maintained a protective posture, his young face showing a maturity beyond his years. The boys have been exceptionally well behaved, Maria pointed out calmly. Premium Airways welcomes passengers of all ages in all cabins, provided they adhere to our conduct guidelines, which these young gentlemen have done exemplarily. Certain people simply don't understand what's appropriate, Catherine replied, the racist subtext of her statement unmistakable. First class has standards. Not everyone belongs, regardless of whether they can afford a ticket. 2 rows behind them, Laura Wilson, a 38-year-old white school teacher in a Talbot's cardigan, closed her hardcover copy of How to Be an Anti-Racist with an audible snap. "Excuse me," she said loudly enough to be heard throughout the cabin. "Those children have been absolutely perfect passengers. They're quiet, polite, and focused on their studies." Catherine turned, clearly startled that another passenger would contradict her. "You clearly don't fly first class often enough to understand. I fly first class monthly for educational conferences," Laura interrupted. "And I've never encountered a passenger as disruptive as you're being right now." Catherine recoiled as if slapped, unused to being challenged by anyone, let alone a stranger in a public setting. The momentary silence that followed was broken only by the soft ding of the fasten seatbelt sign illuminating. "Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Hansen has turned on the fasten seatbelt sign as we prepare for departure. Please ensure your seatbelts are securely fastened. Your seats are in the upright position, and all personal items are properly stowed." The announcement created a brief pause in the confrontation, with Catherine reluctantly turning forward in her seat while muttering about declining standards and the help taking sides against paying customers. The triplets exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them that conveyed both concern and resolve. Daniel's anxiety was visibly escalating despite his efforts to employ the management techniques he'd practiced with Dr. Patterson for 14 sessions. His breathing had become shallow, his hands trembling as he attempted to organize his spelling cards before stowing them. "It's okay," Michael whispered, patting his brother's arm. "She's just a mean lady. Mom says some people are just unhappy inside." The mention of their mother seemed to strengthen all 3 boys, reminding them of the guidance she'd provided for situations exactly like this. Olivia had always been honest with her sons about the prejudice they might face, preparing them with strategies for maintaining their dignity while ensuring their safety. As the aircraft began pushing back from the gate, Catherine made one final attempt to assert her perceived superiority. "I'll be speaking to airline management about this situation. My husband is a Premium Airways ambassador member with over 2 million miles. Maria smiled professionally. "I'd be happy to note your concerns in our flight report. Miss Brooks, would you like to specify exactly what policy violation you believe has occurred?" The question, delivered with perfect professionalism, but designed to highlight the baselessness of Catherine's complaints, left the woman momentarily speechless. Nearby passengers exchanged knowing glances, the cabin's sympathy clearly shifting toward the well-behaved triplets and away from their adult tormentor. The temporary peace lasted approximately 17 minutes and 43 seconds. As the aircraft reached cruising altitude and the seatbelt sign was extinguished, Daniel's anxiety management routine resumed. The quiet finger tapping, index finger to thumb in a rhythmic pattern of 0.73-second intervals, was barely audible, a coping mechanism designed to be unobtrusive in public spaces. For Catherine, however, it became the focal point of her renewed irritation. Every tap seemed amplified in her perception, a deliberate provocation rather than a child's attempt at self-regulation. "Stop. That tapping." She enunciated each word like a separate sentence. Her patience completely evaporated. Daniel froze mid-tap, his anxiety immediately spiking to a 7.4 on his personal 110 scale. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he stammered, reaching for his backpack where his stress ball was stored. And now you're rummaging through bags. Catherine's voice rose sharply. What are you looking for? Something to steal. Are you going through my Goyard tote next? The accusation was so outrageous that even Elijah, with all his practiced composure, couldn't hide his shock. He's getting his stress ball, ma'am, for his anxiety. It was prescribed by Dr. Patterson at Columbia Presbyterian. Anxiety, Catherine repeated mockingly. Is that what they're calling bad behavior these days? In my time, children who couldn't behave properly weren't rewarded with first-class tickets in special treatment. Daniel had located his stress ball, but now sat paralyzed, the therapeutic tool clutched in his rigid fingers as Catherine's hostility intensified his panic response. His breathing became more labored, the early signs of an anxiety attack that his brothers immediately recognized from the 3% increase in his respiratory rate. Michael, unable to bear his brother's distress, spoke up with uncharacteristic sharpness. You're being mean. My brother has anxiety, and you're making it worse. It's a recognized medical condition. I don't need parenting advice from a child, Catherine snapped. Perhaps if your mother spent more time teaching you proper behavior instead of putting you in places you don't belong. Our mother taught us to stand up to bullies, Elijah interrupted, his young voice steady despite the tension. She said we should always be respectful, but never let anyone make us feel like we don't belong somewhere. Catherine's face contorted with rage at being challenged by an 8-year-old. Your mother clearly doesn't understand how society works. There are appropriate places for everyone. In first class, our mother understands exactly how society works. Michael interjected with the simple confidence of a child stating an obvious fact. That's enough, Catherine hissed, her composure cracking completely. I will not be lectured by children who clearly have no home training whatsoever. By now, multiple passengers had begun documenting the confrontation. Marcus Bennett had discreetly activated his iPhone 17 Pro Max's camera, capturing Catherine's increasingly erratic behavior in 8K resolution at 60 FPS. Laura Wilson had moved to the empty seat across from the triplets, positioning herself as a protective barrier. Amanda Keller, a 36-year-old white attorney in seat 4C, was taking notes with the practiced efficiency of someone accustomed to documenting potential legal issues. What happened next occurred in a horrible slow motion that seared itself into the memory of every witness. Daniel's anxiety had reached the point where he began his breathing exercises, a sequence of 4 counts in, 7 counts, hold, 8 counts out, accompanied by a barely audible whisper as he counted. 1, 2, 3, 4. Catherine's arm rose, her diamond tennis bracelet, Tiffany Victoria, spun 48 carats, $58,000 catching the overhead light, sending prismatic reflections dancing across the cabin ceiling. Her manicured hand, adorned with a 3.5-carat graph emerald-cut engagement ring, arced through the air with deliberate force. The sound was unmistakable, skin striking skin, a crack that seemed to echo despite the plane's sound-dampening design. Daniel's head snapped sideways, his titanium glasses flying off and skittering 3 rows forward. A perfectly defined red handprint bloomed across his dark cheek, 5 finger marks raised in angry welts. His spelling cards scattered, 427 meticulously prepared study aids fluttering across the premium cabin floor like confetti. For 2 heartbeats, the entire cabin fell silent. Then Daniel's sob broke through, not loud or dramatic, but a small, hurt sound that seemed to physically pain the passengers who heard it. Stop that disruptive noise this instant, Catherine demanded, her voice unnaturally high, as the reality of what she'd done began to register. This is what happens when children don't learn their place. The cabin erupted. She hit that child, Laura Wilson shouted, already on her feet despite the active seatbelt sign. I'm a witness, Marcus Bennett called out, his phone still recording. I have it all on video, 10:1 with GPS metadata. Maria Rodriguez moved with the speed and precision of someone trained for emergency response, immediately positioning herself between Catherine and the triplets. Young Mr. Reynolds, are you all right? She asked Daniel, kneeling to his level while simultaneously activating her emergency call button to summon additional crew. Dr. Robert Tweed Garcia, a 54-year-old Hispanic pediatrician seated in 3B, was already moving toward them. "I'm a doctor," he announced, professional authority clear in his voice. "Board certified in pediatric medicine. Let me examine him." James Taylor had retrieved Daniel's glasses, checking them for damage before gently returning them to the stunned child. "You're safe now," he assured quietly. "We won't let her near you again." Elijah had wrapped a protective arm around Daniel, his young face a mask of fury and fear. Michael was openly crying, not for himself but for his brother, his natural optimism temporarily shattered by this confirmation that the world wasn't always the kind place he believed it to be. Catherine seemed frozen in the aftermath of her action, her expression cycling through shock, defiance, and the beginnings of fear as she registered the unified response of the cabin. Her momentary silence didn't last long. "He was being deliberately provocative," she insisted, her voice taking on a desperate edge. "I simply responded to continuous disruption after multiple warnings. Anyone would have done the same." "You assaulted a child," Amanda Keller stated flatly, her legal training evident in her precise language. "A minor, in front of multiple witnesses, with video evidence, that's a felony offense in Georgia, where we'll be landing. Aggravated assault on a person under 14 carries a potential sentence of 520 years. Jason Miller, a 23-year-old white college student in the last row of first class, had begun live streaming to TikTok, his running commentary adding another layer of documentation. "This woman just straight up slapped a little black kid in first class because he was breathing too loud. The flight attendants are stepping in, but this is wild. She literally hit a child for existing in her space. Hashtag justice for triplets now. Hashtag first-class racism." The cabin's response had transformed from shocked silence to coordinated action with remarkable speed. Maria had activated Premium Airways Code Yellow, the designation for passenger conflicts, requiring immediate intervention. Thomas Martinez, the lead flight attendant, arrived from business class to assess the situation while James continued to comfort the triplets. "I need to make a complete incident report," Thomas informed Catherine with professional detachment. "Your name as it appears on your government ID, please." "This is ridiculous," Catherine sputtered. "I was defending myself from continuous harassment. That child was deliberately provoking me with his incessant movement." "Ma'am, multiple witnesses observed you striking an unaccompanied minor," Thomas continued, unmoved. "Federal aviation regulations under 14 CFR 91. 11 prohibit interference with crew members, and FAA guidelines require a complete report, which will be forwarded to authorities at our destination." Catherine's hand clutched her iPhone 17 Pro Max like a lifeline. "I'm calling my husband. He's a premium ambassador member with 2.7 million lifetime miles. This is completely unacceptable treatment." "What's unacceptable is assaulting a child," Laura Wilson interjected from across the aisle. "I've already emailed the video to myself in case anyone's phone mysteriously disappears before landing. Timestamp 12/14/27 Eastern Standard." Dr. Ramaj Garcia had completed his examination of Daniel, whose shock was giving way to physical pain as the handprint on his face deepened to an angry crimson. "He'll need ice for the swelling," the doctor advised. "And I'd recommend a formal medical examination upon landing. I'm documenting the injury now for potential legal proceedings. The impact force was approximately 4.3 newtons based on visible tissue displacement." The calculated clinical assessment seemed to finally penetrate Catherine's defensive bubble, the first flickers of genuine concern crossing her features as she registered the serious legal implications of her actions. "It was a tap, not a slap," she insisted, her voice less certain. "Barely made contact at all. The video shows otherwise," Marcus Bennett replied coldly, "and the physical evidence is pretty clear." He gestured toward Daniel's marked face, where the outline of Catherine's hand remained clearly visible, now beginning to show slight edema at a 1.2 millimeter elevation from normal tissue. Captain Victoria Hansen's voice came through Maria's communication device, requesting a status update on the cabin situation. After a brief exchange, Maria returned her attention to the triplets. "Young Mr. Reynolds, we've notified ground operations about this incident. Medical personnel will meet us upon arrival, and security will handle the situation." Her deliberate vagueness was clearly intended to avoid further distressing the children, though the implication was clear to every adult in the cabin. Catherine's phone call to her husband had connected, her voice now carrying a note of panic beneath the indignation. Richard, you need to call someone at Premium Airways immediately. There's been a ridiculous misunderstanding. These children were completely out of control, and now everyone's overreacting to a simple disciplinary action. The cabin's collective response to this characterization was immediate and unmistakable. Even passengers who hadn't witnessed the incident directly were now fully engaged, their expressions ranging from disgust to open hostility toward Catherine. What none of them could know, not the crew, not the supportive passengers, not even Catherine herself, was that this incident had already triggered a notification system designed by none other than Olivia Reynolds herself. The moment Maria had entered the code yellow into the cabin management system, an alert had been forwarded to Premium Airways' senior leadership, and the CEO of Premium Airways, who happened to be waiting in the first-class lounge for her board meeting, had just received an automated notification that her sons were involved in a passenger incident at 30,000 feet. The storm that had been building in the first-class cabin of Premium Airways Flight 823 was about to meet the unstoppable force of a mother's protection and a CEO's authority, combined in one formidable person who was already moving toward the gate with single-minded purpose. Part 4. Airline Response and Building Tension. Maria Rodriguez had managed complex passenger situations throughout her 15-year career with Premium Airways. But the assault on a child in first class represented a new level of crisis management. With practiced efficiency, she had implemented the airline's incident response protocols while simultaneously ensuring the emotional and physical safety of the young victim. James, bring the ZCOM medical kit and the Swift Cool compression pack for the child, she instructed her colleague quietly. Thomas, notify the captain that we'll need Alpha 1 security personnel at the gate upon arrival. The first-class cabin had reorganized itself in the aftermath of the assault. The Kittinger-designed drink cart had been strategically positioned to create a physical barrier between Catherine and the Reynolds triplets. Laura Wilson had moved to sit beside the boys, offering the comforting presence of a teacher accustomed to working with children in distress. Dr. Garcia continued his medical assessment, documenting Daniel's injury with professional thoroughness using the ProMed assessment app on his iPad Pro. I'm activating the cabin's incident documentation system, Maria announced, retrieving the small Sony Alpha 7C camera that was standard equipment on all Premium Airways flights. This is Flight Attendant Maria Rodriguez, documenting a code yellow incident on Flight 823. The time is 12:17:43 p.m. Eastern Standard. She calmly recorded the visible injury on Daniel's face, the scattered spelling cards across the cabin floor, and the protective posture of his brothers. Daniel Reynolds, age 8, has sustained a facial injury following physical contact from passenger Catherine Brooks. Seat 1D. Multiple witnesses confirm unprovoked physical assault with an estimated impact force of 4.3 newtons based on visible tissue displacement. Catherine's expression shifted from defiance to alarm as she realized the formal documentation process underway. "You can't film me without consent," she protested. "That's invasion of privacy. My attorney at Sullivan and Cromwell will have a field day with this." "Ma'am, the Premium Airways terms of carriage you agreed to during booking include consent for security documentation in the event of onboard incidents," Thomas explained with detached professionalism. Section 17.3.2 specifically covers security protocols following passenger altercations. This is standard procedure following any physical altercation. James returned with the first-class medical kit, offering Daniel a Swift Cool compression pack wrapped in a Premium Airways Egyptian cotton napkin. "This will help with the swelling," he explained gently. "The inner gel maintains a therapeutic temperature of exactly 38.7 Fi for optimal tissue recovery. Would you like some Evian water?" Daniel nodded silently, his initial shock now giving way to quiet tears. Elijah maintained his protective position, one arm around his brother's shoulders, while Michael had begun gathering the scattered spelling cards with trembling hands. "His competition," Michael explained to Laura, his voice breaking. "He's worked so hard, and now his cards are everywhere." He had them organized by etymology and difficulty level. The simple heartbreak in the child's voice seemed to affect the cabin more deeply than any of the dramatic confrontation that had preceded it. Passengers from across first class spontaneously began collecting the flashcards, passing them forward with expressions of gentle encouragement. "You've got this, buddy," a businessman in 5B said as he handed several cards to Michael. Don't let one mean person stop you from showing how brilliant you are. My son competed in nationals last year. I know how hard you've worked. Jason Miller's TikTok live stream had already attracted over 17,442 viewers, his running commentary providing real-time documentation of both the assault and its aftermath. The flight attendants are handling this like absolute pros, but the poor kid is still in shock. His brothers are being so protective, and now passengers are helping pick up all his spelling competition cards that went flying when she hit him. The app's translation feature is identifying words in 17 different languages on these cards. These kids are seriously smart. In the rear of the first-class cabin, Thomas was coordinating with ground operations through the aircraft's secure XK-7 communication system. Premium operations. This is Lead F.A. Martinez on Flight 823. We have a code yellow involving assault on a minor, requesting Alpha 1 security and medical personnel upon arrival. Victim is an unaccompanied minor. Daniel Reynolds, age 8. There was a pause before the response came through. The voice on the other end suddenly more alert. Did you say Reynolds as in the Reynolds triplets? Affirmative. Daniel Reynolds has sustained a facial injury following assault by an adult passenger. Another pause. Longer this time. Lead F.A. Martinez, please stand by for priority protocol update. Secure the cabin and await further instructions. Implementing Omega-7 protocol effective immediately. Thomas's expression revealed momentary confusion, but his training quickly reasserted itself. Whatever special protocol was being activated, his immediate responsibility remained ensuring cabin safety and documenting the incident properly. Meanwhile, Catherine's phone conversation with her husband had taken on an increasingly desperate tone. Richard, you need to call someone immediately. They're treating me like I'm some kind of criminal. Yes, I made contact with the child, but he was deliberately provoking me with constant noise and movement. The other passengers exchanged glances of disbelief at this characterization, several shaking their heads in silent rejection of her narrative. What do you mean? Is there video? Catherine continued, color draining from her face. Why would that matter if I didn't do anything wrong? A pause. Of course there's video. Everyone films everything these days. But that's not the point. The point is, whatever her husband said next caused Catherine to fall silent, the first flickers of genuine fear crossing her features as she realized the seriousness of her situation. Richard, you need to help me fix this before we land. Call someone at the airline. Use your ambassador status. Amanda Keller had begun circulating through the cabin, quietly collecting contact information from witnesses. I'm an attorney with Morrison and Forster, she explained to each passenger. I believe what we witnessed constitutes assault on a minor with potential hate crime enhancements, given the racial component of the confrontation. If you're willing to provide testimony, should this proceed to legal action, I'd like to create a witness contact list. The response was unanimous. Every passenger she approached readily provided their information, many adding unsolicited comments about their observations prior to the assault that established a pattern of racial animosity. She was targeting those children from the moment she boarded, Marcus Bennett noted as he added his business card to Amanda's collection. Multiple comments about their kind and knowing their place. The assault wasn't isolated. It was the culmination of escalating racist behavior. Sir, Garcia had completed his examination of Daniel and approached Maria with his professional assessment. The physical damage is relatively minor. Superficial contusion with no evidence of orbital or maxillary injury. However, the psychological impact is significant. The child is exhibiting signs of acute stress response, heightened pulse rate of 112 BPM, minor tremors in the extremities, and pupillary dilation of approximately 7 millimole. I'd recommend a full evaluation by a pediatric specialist and child psychologist upon landing. Catherine overheard this exchange, her expression hardening again as she attempted to reassert control over the narrative. This is absolutely ridiculous. A tap on the face doesn't require a psychological evaluation. This is clearly an attempt to exaggerate the situation. Ms. Brooks, Maria responded with icy professionalism, I strongly advise you to refrain from making further comments about the incident. Everything said in this cabin is being documented and may be used in subsequent legal proceedings. Section 18.4. 7 of Federal Aviation Regulations prohibits passenger interference with crew member duties, which includes commentary on ongoing security incidents. The warning had its intended effect, silencing Catherine temporarily as she turned her attention back to her phone, frantically typing messages that presumably sought assistance from connections she believed could extract her from the situation. What she couldn't know was that the most powerful person in Premium Airways was already responding to the incident, and that no connection, no ambassador status, no amount of privilege would shield her from the consequences of assaulting Olivia Reynolds' son. In the Premium Airways Operations Center at Kennedy Airport, Senior Director of Security, Michael Thompson stared at the incoming notification with growing alarm. The Reynolds triplets are involved in a passenger incident with physical assault. His assistant nodded, her expression equally concerned. Code Yellow reported by Led F.A. Martinez. 8-year-old Daniel Reynolds sustained facial injury from adult passenger in 1D. Catherine Brooks, Michael read from the passenger manifest. Where is Dr. Reynolds right now? In the first-class lounge. The board meeting is scheduled to begin in 17 minutes. Michael's decision was immediate. Alert her personal security team. I'll notify her myself. Activate Omega-7 protocol. Within 90 seconds, Olivia Reynolds received the notification that would transform an already tense situation into something unprecedented in Premium Airways history. Her response was immediate and decisive. Cancel the board meeting, she instructed her assistant without hesitation. Tell them there's an operational emergency requiring my direct intervention. Then get me on that aircraft. The plane has already pushed back, her assistant explained. They're at 30,000 feet. Olivia's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes, a cold calculation replacing her initial alarm. Contact Captain Hansen directly. Tell her to maintain current altitude and await further instructions. Then get me a secure line to air traffic control. The cabin of Flight 823 had settled into an uneasy equilibrium. Catherine remained isolated in her seat, alternating between frantic phone communications and stony silence. The triplets had been relocated to the last row of first class, with Laura Wilson remaining beside them as a protective presence. The rest of the passengers maintained a watchful vigilance, their collective attention focused on ensuring Catherine made no further attempts to approach the children. At 12:36 p.m., an unexpected announcement came over the aircraft's intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Hansen. We've been instructed to maintain our current position while awaiting clearance for a priority protocol. We expect this will add approximately 40 minutes to our flight time. We appreciate your patience and understanding. The unusual announcement triggered a wave of speculative murmurs throughout the cabin. Priority protocols typically involve medical emergencies or security threats, not passenger disputes, no matter how serious. Thomas's communication device activated with a priority signal. He moved to the galley to take the call privately, returning moments later with a transformed expression, professional as ever, but with an unmistakable undercurrent of something that might have been satisfaction. He approached Maria, speaking in a carefully modulated voice that nevertheless carried to several nearby passengers. We've been instructed to prepare for an executive boarding at 12:55. Full Alpha protocol. Maria's composure slipped momentarily, her eyes widening. Alpha protocol, are you certain? Confirmed through command. The aircraft will make a controlled descent to 15,000 feet. Executive boarding via aft stairs during holding pattern. The exchange, cryptic as it was, sent ripples of speculation throughout the cabin. Alpha Protocol was Premium Airways' highest-level executive intervention, a procedure so rarely implemented that most crew members had only encountered it in training simulations, never in actual operations. Catherine, sensing the shift in cabin energy, attempted to reassert herself. What's happening? Why are we being delayed? I have connections in Atlanta that can't be rescheduled. Ma'am, we're implementing a priority protocol. Maria explained with minimal detail. Captain Hansen will provide updates as appropriate. This is outrageous, Catherine insisted, her voice rising again. First, I'm harassed by unaccompanied children. Then I'm treated like a criminal for maintaining order. And now the entire flight is delayed without explanation. Her complaints fell on deliberately deaf ears. The crew had shifted into a heightened state of professionalism, their movements taking on a precision that suggested preparation for something significant. At exactly 12:47 p.m., James approached the triplets with a Thales Top Connect satellite phone, equipment typically reserved for emergency communications. Young Mr. Reynolds, he addressed Elijah formally. There's a secure call for you and your brothers. The phone was connected before Elijah could respond. He listened for a moment, his expression transforming from confusion to visible relief. Yes, we're okay. Daniel got hit, but a doctor looked at him and said he'll be all right. A pause. Yes, we're safe now. The flight attendants and passengers have been really nice. Another pause. Okay, we will. He passed the phone to Daniel, who listened silently before whispering, I'm okay, Mom. It just hurts a little. His next words, barely audible to nearby passengers, revealed a child's fundamental concern beneath the trauma. Can I still do the competition tomorrow? Will I be able to spell my words? Whatever response came through the satellite connection brought the first genuine smile to Daniel's face since the assault. Michael took his turn on the phone last, his natural exuberance somewhat muted but still present. Mom, it was so scary, but Elijah protected us, and Ms. Wilson has been sitting with us, and everyone's been helping pick up Daniel's cards. As Michael returned the phone to James, the triplets seemed transformed, still shaken, but now carrying themselves with a renewed confidence that puzzled nearby passengers who couldn't understand the source of this sudden change. Catherine had observed this exchange with growing suspicion. Why are those children allowed to make satellite calls? Those are for emergencies only? That's correct, ma'am, Thomas confirmed without elaboration, offering no explanation for why this situation qualified as an emergency deserving of satellite communication. At 12:52 p.m., Captain Hansen's voice returned to the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning our descent to 15,000 feet to implement a priority protocol. Please ensure your seatbelts remain fastened during this procedure. The aircraft banked gently, beginning a controlled descent that was smooth but unmistakable. The mood in the cabin shifted again, tension giving way to curiosity as passengers sensed they were witnessing something highly unusual. Jason Miller's TikTok livestream had reached over 56,473 viewers, his commentary becoming increasingly excited. Guys, something major is happening. The plane is descending, but we're not landing. They're doing some kind of special protocol. The crew is acting super formal all of a sudden. This is way beyond a regular passenger incident response. At precisely 12:55 p.m., Thomas's communication device activated again. He listened intently before addressing the cabin crew with a single phrase that sent an electric current through the entire aircraft. Executive Alpha confirmed. Prepare for CEO boarding. Catherine's head snapped up at those words, her expression cycling through confusion, disbelief, and the first genuine flickers of fear. CEO boarding. What does that mean? No one bothered to answer her question. The entire cabin crew had shifted into a heightened state of readiness, moving with the synchronized precision of a military honor guard preparing for inspection. What happened next would be described in thousands of social media posts, hundreds of news articles, and would eventually become company legend at Premium Airways, the day Olivia Reynolds demonstrated exactly how far a mother would go to protect her children, with all the resources of a Fortune 500 company at her disposal. The calm before the storm settled over the first-class cabin of Flight 823. Catherine had regained her composure, confidence returning as the initial shock in the cabin subsided. Flight attendants had separated her from the boys with the drink cart strategically positioned between them. She typed furiously on her phone, messaging her attorney ridiculous situation on flight, being harassed for disciplining an out-of-control child, need immediate legal support upon landing. Sullivan and Cromwell should handle this directly. Her sense of righteous indignation had fully returned when Thomas's communication device rang. He answered, his professional expression shifting subtly as he listened. Yes, Dr. Reynolds, understood. We'll prepare for your arrival. Catherine smirked, assuming another passenger was causing trouble elsewhere. She adjusted her Hermes della Cavalleria scarf and took a self-satisfied sip of her Dom Perignon P2 2003, completely unprepared for what was about to happen. The change rippled through the cabin like a wave. Flight attendants who had been professional but standard in their demeanor suddenly straightened their uniforms and positioned themselves at attention, ranks forming with military precision. The cockpit door opened with a pressurized hiss that seemed louder than usual in the tense cabin. Captain Victoria Hansen emerged, an unprecedented mid-flight appearance that immediately signaled to every experienced traveler that something extraordinary was occurring. She moved to the front of first class, addressing the cabin with formal authority. Ladies and gentlemen, Premium Airways is implementing Executive Protocol Alpha. Dr. Olivia Reynolds, Chief Executive Officer of Premium Airways, is boarding this aircraft to address a priority situation. Please remain in your seats with your seatbelts fastened during this procedure. Catherine's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips, a drop of the expensive liquid spilling onto her Dior blouse as the implications of the announcement registered. The CEO is coming aboard during flight. No one answered her question. The entire cabin crew had formed a formal reception line extending from the front galley toward the rear of the aircraft, their postures reflecting the gravity of the situation. The cabin fell into complete silence. The only sound the steady hum of the engines as the aircraft maintained its holding pattern at 15,000 feet. Then came the unmistakable sound of the aft stairs deploying, a safety feature designed for emergency evacuations, now being used for what might be the most dramatic CEO entrance in aviation history. For exactly 47 seconds, nothing happened. Then a ripple of movement began at the rear of the aircraft, a presence moving forward with measured steps. Passengers in economy and business class turned in their seats, phones raised to document the unprecedented event unfolding before them. Dr. Olivia Reynolds emerged from the business class curtain, and even passengers who didn't recognize her immediately sensed the shift in power. She wore no uniform, just an impeccably tailored Chanel suit in navy blue from their limited Métier d'Art collection, $17,400 with the small, distinctive gold wings pin that only the highest executives were authorized to wear. Her natural hair was styled in an elegant crown that added to her already commanding 5'10" height. The flight attendants didn't just make way, they almost bowed as she passed, respect evident in every movement. James whispered to a confused passenger, "That's not just any executive. That's the executive. CEO since 2019 transformed the company from regional carrier to global leader with 27.4% market share growth." For exactly 7 seconds, Olivia stood at the threshold of first class, her eyes conducting a precise assessment of the scene: her son's marked face, the scattered spelling cards, Catherine's defiant posture. The temperature in the cabin seemed to drop 10 degrees in those seconds. Without speaking, Olivia moved directly to her sons, kneeling before Daniel with a mother's focused concern. She gently examined his face, fingertips lightly tracing the still visible handprint on his cheek. "Does it hurt, sweetheart?" she asked, her voice soft with a tenderness that contrasted sharply with her formidable presence. Daniel nodded, a single tear escaping despite his efforts to appear brave. "A little, but Dr. Garcia said it's just a surface injury." "Dr. Garcia is correct about the physical aspect," Olivia agreed, in meeting her son's eyes directly. "But there's more to healing than just the physical part, isn't there?" "My cards got scattered everywhere," Daniel whispered, the true measure of his distress evident in this concern for his competition preparation. "And what happened to them?" Olivia prompted gently. Michael answered, his natural optimism reasserting itself. "Everyone helped pick them up. Mom, even people we don't know. They said they believe in us." Olivia smiled at her youngest, love and pride evident in her expression. "That's an important lesson, isn't it? For every one person who tries to hurt you, there are many more ready to help and support you." Elijah, always their protector, leaned forward. "Mom, we tried to handle it like you taught us. We stayed polite, but we didn't let her make us feel like we didn't belong." "You did exactly right," Olivia assured him, resting her hand briefly on his shoulder in acknowledgement of his efforts to shield his brothers. Only after fully attending to her sons did Olivia Reynolds rise to her full height and turn toward Catherine Brooks. The transformation was immediate and absolute. Maternal warmth replaced by executive authority with a precision that left the cabin breathless. "I'm Dr. Olivia Reynolds, Chief Executive Officer of Premium Airways and mother of the children you assaulted," she stated, her voice carrying effortlessly throughout the cabin without appearing to raise its volume. "Before this aircraft lands, you and I are going to have a very specific conversation about consequences." Catherine's mouth opened and closed without producing sound, recognition dawning too late as she finally understood the magnitude of her miscalculation. Her world of privilege and protection was about to collide with a force it had never encountered before, and there wasn't a connection in the world that could save her now. Part 5: Confrontation and Consequences. I'm Dr. Olivia Reynolds, Chief Executive Officer of Premium Airways and mother of the children you assaulted. The words hung in the air of the first-class cabin, each syllable landing with the precision of a perfectly aimed arrow. Olivia hadn't raised her voice. She didn't need to. 2 decades leading boardrooms and commanding the respect of an entire industry had taught her that true power never shouted. Catherine's face drained of color, her carefully maintained composure crumbling as the full implications of her situation crashed down upon her. She had assaulted the children of the woman who controlled the very aircraft they were flying in, the airline she was dependent upon for transport, the company whose loyalty program her husband valued above almost anything else. There must be some misunderstanding, Catherine managed, her voice suddenly higher, thinner than before. I simply responded to continuous disruptive behavior after multiple warnings. As a founding member with 2.7 million lifetime miles, I expect certain standards in premium cabins. Olivia's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes, a cold assessment replacing her initial controlled anger. Ms. Brooks, I'm going to speak very clearly to ensure there are no further misunderstandings that you have committed 3 terminable offenses against both my airline's contractual terms of carriage and my son. She took a single step forward, command radiating from her in almost visible waves. She didn't approach Catherine closely. Executives understood that physical proximity diminished psychological impact during performance corrections. The principal, taught in her advanced leadership psychology seminar at Harvard Business School where she guest lectured annually, was most effective when applied with precision. First offense violation of Section 4.3.2 of your passenger agreement, assault on a minor in a Premium Airways controlled environment. Second violation of our non-discrimination policy, which you acknowledged during digital check-in at precisely 9:37:14 this morning. Third, creation of a hostile environment requiring flight crew intervention. Classified as a Class 2 disruption under FAA Regulation 9191-423. Each violation was enumerated with the same tone Olivia used when dismantling failing executives in boardroom presentations. The clinical precision of her assessment seemed more devastating than any emotional outburst could have been. Per my authority under 49 U.S.C. 4631 and Premium Airways Governance Statute 17.4, I am immediately terminating your passenger status, implementing a permanent exclusion protocol, and initiating both criminal and civil proceedings. Catherine's last defenses crumbled visibly, privilege giving way to panic. You can't do this, she stuttered, her polished accent slipping to reveal the middle-class origins she'd spent decades bearing. Do you know who my husband is? The Brooks family has held preferred passenger status since 1987. We were invited to the Founders Retirement Gala. Your husband's venture capital firm, Whitfield Partners, currently holds a 3.2% stake in North Star Aviation, our direct competitor. That relationship has zero relevance to Premium Airways operations or to the assault you committed against a child on my aircraft. The precise knowledge of her husband's business dealings stripped away Catherine's last defense, the illusion that her connections made her untouchable. Her carefully applied makeup began to disintegrate along with her composure. Tears cut tracks through her $120 Clé de Peau boot foundation. The Botox that froze her forehead couldn't stop the ugly contortion of her mouth as privilege gave way to panic. This isn't happening, she whispered, mascara bleeding down her cheeks in black rivulets. This can't be happening to me. Olivia's response was measured, inexorable. This is happening, Miss Brooks, and I want you to understand exactly what this entails. She turned slightly, addressing Thomas with the seamless pivot of an executive accustomed to directing resources. Martinez, please document that. Effective immediately. Catherine Brooks is permanently banned from all Premium Airways services worldwide. This includes flights, lounges, partner benefits, and alliance privileges. Yes, Dr. Reynolds, Thomas confirmed, entering the information into his tablet with meticulous care. Additionally, Olivia continued, turning back to Catherine, upon landing, you will be met by law enforcement officers who will process your arrest for assault on a minor. Given the racial component of your behavior prior to the physical assault, the district attorney will be evaluating hate crime enhancements to those charges. Each consequence landed like a body blow. Stripping away the protective layers of privilege Catherine had wrapped around herself throughout her adult life. The cabin remained utterly silent, passengers and crew alike witnessing the systematic dismantling of entitlement by someone with genuine authority. "This is completely disproportionate," Catherine protested, desperation edging into her voice. It was a tap, barely made contact. These kinds of misunderstandings happen all the time in travel situations. Surely we can resolve this without involving authorities. Perhaps a donation to your charity of choice. A misunderstanding is a confused dinner reservation. Ms. Brooks, what happened here was a deliberate choice to physically assault an 8-year-old child because you believed your status protected you from consequences. Olivia's voice remained steady, but cold fury radiated beneath her professional veneer. That child happens to be my son. But even if he weren't, the response would be identical. Premium Airways has zero tolerance for assaults on any passenger, regardless of age, race, or relation to company leadership. Catherine's gaze darted around the cabin, seeking any ally, any sympathetic face that might offer support. She found none. The passengers who had witnessed her behavior sat in silent judgment, many still recording the confrontation on their phones. "I'll sue," she threatened weakly. "Defamation, false imprisonment, emotional distress. Jenkins and Gilchrist represents our family." For the first time, something resembling a smile crossed Olivia's face, though it contained no warmth whatsoever. "Ms. Brooks, I strongly recommend you consult with legal counsel before pursuing that course of action. Premium Airways maintains comprehensive documentation of all onboard incidents. Should you choose to enter a legal battle, we would be obligated to submit all evidence to Discovery, including passenger statements, crew observations, and video documentation of both the assault and your prior racist comments about certain people knowing their place." She gestured toward the cabin, where multiple passengers held phones that had captured every moment. "Additionally, I suspect the social media documentation already circulating will provide further challenges to any legal claims you might consider. I believe Mr. Miller's TikTok live stream has already exceeded 73,000 viewers." Catherine's phone buzzed insistently in her hand. The screen, visible to nearby passengers, displayed her husband's name and multiple message notifications. When she didn't immediately respond, the device began ringing. "You should answer that," Olivia suggested with the first hint of genuine satisfaction. "I imagine Mr. Brooks is receiving some rather concerning notifications about his wife's behavior. Premium Airways ambassador status is an invitation-only program, and incidents like this trigger automatic membership review. His 2 million miles are currently in administrative suspension pending an ethics evaluation." Catherine's hands trembled so violently that she struggled to accept the call. "Richard," she whispered, voice cracking. "It's worse than I thought. The children, they're the CEO's sons." The voice on the other end was loud enough that several nearby passengers could hear fragments of panicked questions. "No, I didn't know," Catherine insisted, mascara-stained tears now flowing freely. "How could I possibly have known? They're just children. They look like any other children. How was I supposed to know they were important?" The last phrase hung in the air like a toxic cloud, revealing the fundamental flaw in Catherine's worldview, that only important people deserve respectful treatment, that only certain children were worthy of protection from adult rage. Olivia turned away from this display of self-pity, returning her attention to what truly mattered: her sons. She moved back to where the triplets sat, watching the confrontation with wide eyes, kneeling again to their level. "Are you all right?" she asked, the executive persona falling away completely, replaced by maternal concern. Daniel nodded, though his hand still touched his cheek occasionally. "It doesn't hurt as much now. The ice helped. Dr. Garcia said the superficial capillary damage would begin healing within 6-8 hours. I'm proud of all 3 of you," Olivia said, including Elijah and Michael in her gaze. "You handled a difficult situation with dignity and restraint. That takes remarkable strength, especially at your age." "Mom," Daniel asked hesitantly, "will I still be able to compete tomorrow? Will this?" He gestured to his face. "It'd make it hard for me to concentrate." The question revealed the child's true concern, not the physical pain or the frightening confrontation, but the potential impact on the competition they had worked so hard to reach. Olivia's expression softened completely, love and pride evident in her eyes. Daniel Reynolds, you are going to walk onto that stage tomorrow and show everyone exactly what you're capable of. This, she gestured toward his injured cheek, this is just a temporary mark. It doesn't define you, and it certainly won't stop you from competing at your highest level. Behind her, Catherine's desperate phone conversation continued, now punctuated by barely suppressed sobs as the full weight of consequences settled upon her. Richard, you have to fix this. Call someone. Anyone. Use whatever connections we have. This can't be happening to someone like me. Olivia ignored the display, keeping her focus entirely on her sons. I've arranged for a specialist to meet us when we land. He'll make sure you're physically fine, and then we'll go to the hotel and review your spelling words one more time. How does that sound? The triplets nodded in unison, their confidence visibly bolstered by their mother's presence and assurance. Even in the midst of this crisis, Olivia was demonstrating the leadership principle she had instilled in her boys from an early age: focus on what you can control, not on what you cannot. Rising to her full height again, Olivia addressed the cabin crew. Mr. Martinez, please prepare a comprehensive incident report for law enforcement. Ms. Rodriguez, I'd like you to collect contact information from all witnesses willing to provide statements. Her gaze swept the cabin. I want to personally thank every passenger who stepped up to protect my sons during this incident. Your actions represent the best of humanity, and Premium Airways is deeply grateful. The gratitude was genuine, but so was the underlying message. Everything was being documented meticulously, leaving Catherine nowhere to hide from the consequences of her actions. The machinery of accountability was moving with the precision and inevitability of a well-designed system, exactly as Olivia Reynolds had engineered it to do. As Captain Hansen's voice announced their resumption of normal flight operations and continuation to Atlanta, Catherine Brooks sat in stunned silence. Her designer outfit tear-stained, her carefully constructed world of privilege collapsing around her. The Himalaya Nauticus Crocodile Birkin 30 that had been her status symbol now sat tagged and documented as potential evidence. The first-class seat she had guarded so jealously now felt like a trap, forcing her to remain in full view of the passengers whose witness statements would soon be used against her. The remaining 43 minutes of Flight 823 unfolded with a remarkable transformation of the first-class cabin atmosphere. What had begun as a space poisoned by Catherine's hatred had become a community of support and solidarity. Passengers approached the Reynolds family to share words of encouragement, to celebrate the boys' upcoming competition, and to express their admiration for the family's grace under pressure. I'm a spelling coach at Roosevelt Elementary, one woman told Daniel, offering her business card. If you need any last-minute practice before tomorrow, I'd be honored to help. My team placed second in regionals with 87% fewer resources than you've had. My son competed in nationals 3 years ago, a man in 5C added. It's a wonderful experience. Don't let today's incident overshadow your achievement in qualifying. He still keeps his participant badge in his college dorm room. Laura Wilson, who had remained protectively near the boys throughout the confrontation, smiled at Olivia. Your sons are remarkable. Dr. Reynolds, their composure today speaks volumes about your parenting. As the aircraft began its descent into Atlanta, Olivia moved to the galley to confer briefly with Captain Hansen, who had emerged from the cockpit. Their conversation was private, but the formality of their interaction suggested operational decisions being finalized. Upon her return, Olivia addressed the passengers one final time. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for your patience during this unusual flight. When we land, law enforcement officers will board the aircraft first to address the incident that occurred. After they complete their initial procedures, all other passengers will be allowed to deplane normally. Catherine's last desperate attempt to maintain dignity crumbled completely at these words. You're having me arrested publicly. This is humiliating. Can't your security team handle this more discreetly? Olivia turned to her with the first direct address since their initial confrontation. Ms. Brooks, you publicly assaulted a child. The consequences of that action will also be public. That's not humiliation, that's accountability. The words, delivered without anger but with absolute finality, silenced Catherine completely. As the aircraft touched down in Atlanta, she sat frozen in her seat, the reality of her situation finally, irrevocably clear. Her carefully constructed world of privilege had collided with something far more powerful, a mother's fierce protection combined with a CEO's uncompromising authority. And in that collision, privilege had been utterly, completely defeated. Jason Miller's TikTok livestream had reached over 147,926 viewers by the time the aircraft doors opened, his commentary becoming increasingly odd. Guys, I've never seen anything like this. The CEO actually boarded the plane mid-flight to handle this personally, and now the police are coming aboard to arrest the woman who slapped her kid. This is absolute justice happening in real time. Hashtag justice for triplets has been used 28,743 times in the last hour. As the aircraft reached the gate, the cabin fell silent once more. All eyes fixed on the forward door as it opened to reveal two uniformed police officers and an airport security team waiting in the jet bridge. The moment of reckoning had arrived, and not a single passenger looked away. Catherine Brooks' carefully constructed world of privilege imploded in seconds. The Cartier Panthère watch that had been her 40th birthday gift from her third husband suddenly felt like a handcuff on her wrist. The Himalaya Niloticus Crocodile Birkin 30 that she'd positioned prominently on her seat, the $487,000 bag that had required 3 separate calls from Richard to Hermes executives to secure, was being tagged as evidence by an air marshal. You can't do this," she stuttered, her polished accent slipping to reveal the middle-class origins she'd spent decades bearing. "Do you know who my husband is? Our family has held preferred passenger status since 1987. We donated $175,000 to the airline's charity gala last fiscal year." Reynolds didn't even blink. "Your husband's venture capital firm, Whitfield Partners, currently holds a 3.2% stake in North Star Aviation, our direct competitor. That relationship has zero relevance to Premium Airways operations or to the assault you committed against a child on my aircraft. And our charity foundation will be returning your donation with a formal letter explaining exactly why." The precise knowledge of her husband's business dealings and personal philanthropy stripped away Catherine's last defense. The illusion that her connections made her untouchable. "This isn't happening," she whispered, mascara bleeding down her cheeks in black rivulets. "This can't be happening to me." But it was. The cabin that had always welcomed her as an exclusive sanctuary was now a witnessed crime scene. The first-class passengers who she'd expected would be her people were recording her disgrace from multiple angles. The staff who had always catered to her every demand now stood as witnesses against her. Olivia turned away from Catherine's crumbling facade, addressing her sons with gentle authority. "We're going to follow procedure now. The officers will come aboard and handle Ms. Brooks. You 3 will remain seated until they've completed their work, and then we'll disembark together." "Understood." The triplets nodded in perfect unison, their expressions solemn but no longer fearful. Their mother's presence had transformed their experience from a traumatic assault to a powerful lesson in accountability. Witnessing firsthand that actions have consequences, regardless of wealth or status. Detective Sarah Mitchell and Officer James Wilson boarded the aircraft with professional efficiency, moving directly to the first-class cabin where Thomas Martinez awaited with comprehensive documentation of the incident. "Ms. Brooks," Detective Mitchell asked. Though the question was merely procedural, the entire crew had indicated which passenger was involved. Catherine looked up, her expression caught between defiance and terror. "This is all a ridiculous misunderstanding. My attorney will be calling your supervisor within the hour." "Ma'am, I'm Detective Sarah Mitchell with Atlanta Police Department. Based on multiple witness statements and video evidence, you're under arrest for assault on a minor under Georgia Code Section 16523. 1, with additional charges pending for violation of Federal Aviation Regulation 91. 11, prohibiting interference with crew members, and potential hate crime enhancements under 18 Butao C 249. The formal charges, delivered in the detective's matter-of-fact tone, seemed to physically impact Catherine, who shrank further into her seat with each legal citation. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you." The Miranda warning, familiar from countless TV shows but devastating in its real-life application, continued as Officer Wilson applied handcuffs with professional detachment. He used the special front-facing restraint technique required for high-profile arrests in public spaces, allowing Catherine to maintain the illusion of dignity while effectively restraining her. Booking will include fingerprinting, photographing, DNA collection via oral swab, and a minimum 6-hour holding period before bail can be processed, he explained professionally. The district attorney has already been notified and will be reviewing the case for potential felony charging. Catherine managed a barely perceptible nod, all verbal defenses finally exhausted. Please stand and prepare to exit the aircraft, Officer Wilson instructed, guiding her to her feet with firm but correct procedure. As Catherine was escorted toward the door, she passed directly by the Reynolds family. For a moment, her gaze met Olivia's. Entitlement facing accountability in a silent confrontation more powerful than any exchange of words. This isn't over, Catherine whispered, a final desperate attempt at intimidation. You're right about that, Olivia replied calmly. The legal process is just beginning. My corporate legal team of 47 attorneys is merely the opening salvo. Then Catherine was gone, led down the jet bridge in handcuffs, her designer outfit incongruous with her prisoner status, her carefully constructed identity stripped away in full view of everyone who had witnessed her true character, revealed through crisis. The cabin erupted in spontaneous applause, not celebrating Catherine's downfall, but acknowledging justice being served in a world where too often, privilege protected the powerful from consequences of their actions. Mom, Daniel asked quietly as the applause subsided, is she going to jail? Olivia considered the question carefully, aware that her response would shape how her sons process this experience. She's going to face consequences appropriate to her actions. Daniel, the justice system will determine exactly what those consequences will be, but she won't be able to hurt anyone else right now. No, sweetheart, she won't be able to hurt anyone else right now. This simple reassurance seemed to satisfy Daniel, who nodded with the serious expression of a child coming to terms with a difficult reality. Michael, ever the empath, squeezed his brother's hand in silent support. Olivia addressed the passengers one final time. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience and support during this difficult situation. Premium Airways will be contacting each of you personally to express our appreciation for your assistance today. For those who provided witness statements or documentation, our legal team will follow up with any additional information needed. Her professional CEO persona then softened as she gathered her sons. Motherhood once again taking precedence over executive authority. Come on, champions, she said quietly. We have a spelling competition to prepare for. As the Reynolds family prepared to disembark, passengers approached to offer final words of encouragement and support. Your boys are remarkable, Savara Shuston said, her teacher's perspective evident in her assessment. Their composure today speaks volumes about your parenting. Thank you for sitting with them, Olivia replied with genuine gratitude. Knowing they had support from kind strangers made a tremendous difference. Marcus Bennett handed Olivia his business card. I have the entire incident documented from multiple angles. My testimony and evidence are at your disposal. No questions asked. The video files are already backed up to 3 secure cloud locations with blockchain verification. Dr. Garcia approached last, his medical authority evident in his bearing. I've prepared preliminary documentation of Daniel's injury. I'd be happy to provide expert testimony if needed during legal proceedings. The photographs include metric scale references for precise measurement of tissue damage. The outpouring of support, practical, emotional, professional, created a protective community around the Reynolds family as they finally disembarked. The triplets walked with renewed confidence. Daniel's injured cheek now a badge of resilience rather than a mark of victimization. In the terminal, Premium Airways had mobilized resources with astonishing efficiency. A medical team awaited them. Not regular airport staff, but specialists Olivia had arranged during her decisive response to the incident notification. A private security detail ensured their path through the terminal remained unobstructed, while airline representatives managed the practical aspects of their luggage and ground transportation. Dr. Eleanor Jenkins, a pediatric specialist with expertise in trauma assessment, examined Daniel with gentle professionalism. The physical injury is superficial, she explained to both Daniel and Olivia, but I'd like to document it thoroughly for both medical and potential legal purposes. The contusion measures approximately 7.3 centimeters at its widest point, with moderate erythema. Daniel sat patiently as Dr. Jenkins photographed his injury from multiple angles, using a Nikon D850 with a specialized medical lens, applied a soothing calendula-based ointment to reduce inflammation, and conducted a brief neurological assessment to ensure there were no signs of concussion from the impact. "You're being very brave," the doctor told him with a warm smile, "and you're going to be absolutely fine for your competition tomorrow. There's no structural damage to the zygomatic arch or orbital process." "That's what my mom said," Daniel replied with the first genuine smile since the incident. "And she's always right." Meanwhile, Catherine Brooks was experiencing a drastically different processing through the airport. Escorted by law enforcement through a service corridor to avoid creating a public spectacle, she was transferred to a police vehicle waiting at a secure exit. The booking process had already begun electronically. Her fingerprints and preliminary information transmitted to the Fulton County system before she physically arrived. Her husband's frantic calls to corporate contacts and legal representatives would prove futile. No amount of influence could erase what had been witnessed and documented by over 100 passengers and crew members. The district attorney's office, alerted to the high-profile nature of the case, had assigned a senior prosecutor to review the evidence and determine appropriate charges. "Your attorney can meet you at central booking," Detective Mitchell informed Catherine as they approached the police vehicle. "You'll have an opportunity to make a statement after consulting with legal counsel." Catherine's earlier bravado had completely evaporated, replaced by the stunned silence of someone experiencing consequences for perhaps the first time in adult life. The handcuffs, the police vehicle, the formal charges, all elements of a reality she had believed her wealth and connections would eternally shield her from. As the police vehicle departed the airport, Catherine caught a final glimpse of the Premium Airways terminal through the window, the symbolic gateway to the privileged world she had always navigated with entitled ease, now receding from view as she was transported to the much harsher reality of the criminal justice system. Back in the terminal's VIP lounge, Olivia Reynolds had transitioned seamlessly from crisis management back to maternal focus. Her sons sat around a polished walnut conference table, spelling materials spread before them, as she created a protective space for them to process what had happened while refocusing on their competition goals. "Daniel," she said gently, "I want you to know that what happened today wasn't your fault. Not in any way." Daniel nodded, though uncertainty lingered in his expression. "I know that logically, Mom, but it still feels confusing." "That's a perfectly normal reaction," Olivia assured him. "Sometimes people carry anger and prejudice that has nothing to do with us, but we still experience the impact of those feelings. Like when Mr. Peterson wouldn't call on me in math class even though I knew the answers." Elijah contributed, connecting this incident to a previous experience they discussed as a family. "Even though I raised my hand for 7 consecutive questions and statistically should have been selected at least twice." "Exactly what Olivia confirmed. "But remember what we did in that situation. You documented it," Elijah recalled. "You kept a log of every time he overlooked me, and then you showed the principal the pattern. It was 27 instances over 14 school days. And that led to school-wide unconscious bias training for all the teachers," Daniel finished, the family conversation following a familiar pattern that provided comfort through its predictability. "And Mr. Peterson apologized and changed his behavior. His call pattern is now statistically random within a 2.3% margin of error." Olivia smiled at her son's recall, pride evident in her expression. "That's right. We don't just endure injustice, we document it. We address it through proper channels, and we create change that helps others." Michael, who had been quietly gathering spelling cards, looked up with his characteristic optimism. "So something good might come from what happened to Daniel today, something that helps other kids." "I believe it will," Olivia confirmed. "Premium Airways will be implementing new protocols because of this incident, and the legal consequences for Ms. Brooks will send a message about accountability. This reframing of the day's events, from traumatic assault to catalyst for positive change, visibly transformed the energy around the table. The triplets straightened in their seats, their focus returning to the competition that had brought them to Atlanta in the first place. Now, Olivia continued, smoothly transitioning to competition preparation. Let's review your most challenging words one more time before dinner. Daniel, I believe pharmacognosy was giving you trouble with the exact placement of the O on after C. For the next hour, the Reynolds family immersed themselves in final spelling preparations. Daniel's anxiety gradually eased as the familiar routine of practice and encouragement restored his confidence. Elijah maintained his protective stance, occasionally glancing at his brother's injured cheek, but primarily focused on their shared goal. Michael's natural optimism fully rebounded, his enthusiasm infecting the entire group as they worked through increasingly difficult words like eleemosynary and apantheropenization. By the time their dinner arrived, specially prepared by the hotel's executive chef and delivered to their private conference room, the day's trauma had been transformed into a powerful lesson about resilience, justice, and the importance of standing firm in one's rightful place regardless of others' attempts at intimidation. Mom, Daniel asked as they finished their meal. Do you think what happened will affect my concentration tomorrow? Olivia considered the question with the seriousness it deserved, never dismissing her children's concerns. It might create some additional stress, which is why we're going to practice your anxiety management techniques before bedtime. But remember what Dr. Patterson always tells you. Anxiety doesn't take away my abilities, Daniel recited, the therapeutic mantra clearly familiar after 14 sessions. It just creates noise around skills I already have. Exactly. And you've been managing that noise very successfully for a long time now. Daniel nodded, visibly processing this reassurance. I think I'm going to do well tomorrow. Not because of what happened, and not despite it either, just because I've prepared and I'm ready. Olivia's heart swelled with pride at her son's insight, a mature perspective that many adults never achieved. That's exactly right, Daniel. And that understanding is worth more than any spelling trophy could ever be. As the evening progressed, reports reached Olivia about Catherine Brooks processing through the legal system. She had been formally booked into Fulton County custody. Bail set at $75,000 due to the seriousness of the charges and the flight risk posed by her financial resources. Her husband had arrived at the detention center with their attorney, but the earliest she could be released would be the following morning, ensuring she would spend at least one night experiencing the consequences of her actions. These updates, delivered discreetly while the boys prepared for bed, provided Olivia with the necessary information to protect her family while allowing the legal process to unfold appropriately. She had no interest in vengeance, only in justice and in ensuring that what had happened to Daniel created meaningful change beyond their individual experience. In their hotel suite that evening, Olivia maintained their normal bedtime routine, understanding that structure and predictability were powerful antidotes to trauma, especially for children. As she tucked Daniel into bed, she noticed him gently touching his cheek, which still bore a faint pink mark despite the medical treatment with prescription-grade arnica gel. Does it still hurt? She asked softly. Not really, he replied. I was just thinking about tomorrow, about standing on stage with this mark still visible. Olivia sat on the edge of his bed, the 1,000 thread count Egyptian cotton sheets rustling softly. And how do you feel about that? Daniel considered the question carefully. I think it might actually help me be brave, like a reminder that I can handle hard things. Dr. Patterson calls it evidence of resilience. Olivia leaned forward and kissed his forehead, emotion momentarily overwhelming her professional composure. Daniel Reynolds, you are already braver than most grown-ups I know. Get some rest. Champion. Tomorrow is your day to shine. As her sons drifted to sleep, Olivia made a final call to Premium Airways' chief legal officer, confirming that all documentation from the flight had been properly preserved and that the company's position was clear. They would pursue both criminal and civil accountability to the fullest extent possible, not seeking financial gain, but establishing a precedent that would protect other children traveling in American skies. Make sure our position is clear to the DA's office, she instructed. This isn't about Premium Airways' reputation. It's about establishing that there are real consequences for this behavior, regardless of the perpetrator's social standing. The next morning dawned with the excitement of competition day overshadowing the previous day's trauma. The triplets awoke with the focused energy of young athletes preparing for an important game, their matching navy Burberry blazers and carefully polished Ferragamo Junior loafers, creating a picture of poised determination as they headed to the National Elementary Spelling Championship. The competition venue buzzed with activity as young spellers from across the country gathered with their families, coaches, and supporters. The Reynolds triplets attracted attention beyond their identical appearance. News of the incident aboard Flight 823 had spread through social media and local news outlets, creating a wave of supportive interest in their participation. Emily Rogers, the competition director, approached Olivia as they entered the registration area. "Dr. Reynolds, we were horrified to hear about what happened yesterday. Please know that we've implemented additional security measures for all participants, and the Reynolds brothers will receive special attention without making them feel singled out." "Thank you," Olivia replied with genuine appreciation. They're determined to focus on the competition rather than yesterday's incident. As the triplets received their participant badges and information packets, fellow competitors and their families approached with words of encouragement and support. What could have been an isolating experience instead became a powerful demonstration of community solidarity, with participants from diverse backgrounds united in their rejection of the behavior Catherine Brooks had exhibited. "Daniel," a young girl with long braids and a bright yellow dress said as she approached, "My mom and I saw what happened on TikTok. I think you're really brave, and I hope we both make it to the finals. I'm competing in the 9-year-old division." Daniel smiled shyly, his natural reserve momentarily overcome by her friendly openness. "Thank you. Good luck to you too. What's your specialty area?" "Mine is medical terminology." The preliminary rounds began at precisely 9 a.m., with participants divided into age-appropriate groups. Elijah was assigned to Group A, Daniel to Group C, and Michael to Group F, a separation that initially concerned them until Olivia reminded them that they would reunite for lunch between preliminary and final rounds. "Remember, you've prepared for this moment for months," she told them as they prepared to separate. "Trust your knowledge, use your techniques, and remember that I'm proud of you regardless of the outcome." Daniel's group was called first, and he walked to the competition area with squared shoulders and measured steps, the physical embodiment of determination overcoming anxiety. The mark on his cheek had faded significantly but remained visible enough that several judges noticed it, exchanging concerned glances as he took his position at the microphone. "Competitor number 37, Daniel Reynolds," the announcer stated. "Your word is Pharaoh." Daniel closed his eyes briefly, his lips moving silently as he visualized the spelling. "Pharaoh, P-H-A-R-A-O-H, Pharaoh." "Correct," the judge confirmed, making a notation on her scoring sheet. With that first successful word, Daniel's confidence visibly increased. His anxiety management techniques, practiced countless times in less pressured situations, activated automatically, allowing his remarkable memory to function without interference from stress or fear. As the preliminary rounds progressed, all three Reynolds brothers advanced steadily through increasingly difficult words. Elijah approached each challenge with methodical precision, requesting definitions and language origins before spelling with careful deliberation. Michael spelled with intuitive confidence, his natural linguistic abilities compensating for his less structured approach to preparation. But it was Daniel who truly transformed before the audience's eyes. With each correct spelling, his posture straightened further, his voice grew stronger, and the mark on his cheek seemed to fade into insignificance compared to the bright intelligence shining in his expression. The injury that Catherine Brooks had intended as a mark of humiliation had become instead a badge of resilience, visible evidence of a challenge faced and overcome. By lunchtime, all three Reynolds brothers had qualified for the final rounds, an achievement impressive enough on its own, but made extraordinary by the circumstances surrounding their competition. As they reunited in the participants' lounge, their excitement was palpable. "Daniel, you got pharmacopoeia," Michael exclaimed, bouncing with characteristic enthusiasm. "That was one of your challenge words," Daniel smiled, a quiet pride evident in his expression. "I saw it clearly in my mind, just like we practiced." The Greek root pharmakon appeared in blue, and the Latin poeia in green. Elijah, always attuned to his brother's emotional states, studied Daniel carefully. "How's your anxiety level? A scale of 1 to 10, maybe a 4. Daniel answered honestly. "But it's the good kind, the kind that sharpens focus rather than blocks it." Olivia watched this exchange with a mixture of pride and wonder, Her sons had transformed yesterday's trauma into today's triumph through a combination of preparation, resilience, and their unbreakable bond with each other. Whatever the afternoon's final results might bring, they had already achieved something far more valuable than any spelling trophy. As the competition broke for lunch, media interest in the Reynolds family had intensified. Local news crews positioned themselves strategically, hoping for interviews or at least footage of the triplets whose story had captivated social media overnight. Jason Miller's TikTok documentation of the flight incident had reached over 2.7 million views, with hashtags like #JusticeForDaniel and #CEOMom Justice trending nationwide. Olivia fielded essential communications while maintaining a protective bubble around her sons during their lunch break. A text from Premium Airways' chief legal officer confirmed that Catherine Brooks had been released on bail that morning, with strict conditions including surrender of her passport and prohibition from any contact with the Reynolds family. Dr. Reynolds, Emily Rogers approached their table with a tablet in hand. We've received an unprecedented number of requests for media access to your family. The competition has a policy against interviews during active rounds, but I wanted you to be aware of the interest. Thank you, Olivia replied. We won't be doing any interviews today. The boys need to focus on the competition, not on yesterday's incident. Emily nodded appreciatively. That's exactly what I hoped you'd say. We've increased security at all entrances to ensure no unauthorized media enters the competition space. As the triplets finished their lunch and prepared for the final rounds, a supportive network had formed around them. Other competitors offered encouragement, parents shared words of admiration, and competition staff ensured they had everything needed to perform at their best. The final rounds began at 2:00 p.m., with the difficulty level increasing dramatically. Competitors faced words with obscure etymologies, counterintuitive spellings, and specialized technical meanings. One by one, even the most prepared young spellers succumbed to the mounting challenge, leaving the stage with disappointed but gracious expressions. Michael Reynolds reached the top 10 in his division before finally stumbling on syzygy, a term from astronomy that he spelled with an extra I. He accepted the elimination with characteristic good nature, high-fiving the remaining competitors as he left the stage. Great job, Michael, Olivia told him as he joined her in the audience. Top 10 is an incredible achievement. I knew how to spell it, too, he replied, without disappointment. I just got excited and added an extra letter, but now I can cheer extra loud for Elijah and Daniel. Elijah advanced to the final 5 in his division, demonstrating remarkable composure as the words grew increasingly arcane. His methodical approach served him well until he encountered pteridomania, a Victorian-era obsession with ferns, which he spelled with an E where an I should have been. Second place is awesome, Elijah, Michael consoled as his brother joined them. Only one more person to go, and then we can watch Daniel. Daniel's division had started with 43 competitors. Through the afternoon, that number had dwindled to just 3. Daniel and 2 other exceptional young spellers who showed no signs of faltering as they approached the 2-hour mark of the final round. Competitor number 37, Daniel Reynolds, the announcer called. Your word is apanthropinization. A collective intake of breath swept through the audience. A word of this complexity would challenge collegiate spelling champions, let alone an 8-year-old. Daniel stood perfectly still at the microphone, his eyes closed in concentration. The mark on his cheek was visible under the stage lights, a physical reminder of yesterday's confrontation that now seemed to fuel rather than hinder his focus. Apanthropinization, he repeated carefully. May I have the definition, please? The act or process of becoming removed from human concerns or human society, the judge defined, language of origin. Greek with English combining forms. Daniel nodded, his fingers moving slightly at his sides as though tracing the letters in air. Then, with clear, deliberate precision, he spelled APANTHROPINIZATION, panthropinization. A moment of silence. Then, correct. The audience erupted in applause, with Michael's enthusiastic cheering rising above the general acclaim. Daniel allowed himself a small smile before returning to his seat, the composed exterior barely containing the excitement visible in his eyes. The final elimination came 20 minutes later, when competitor number 42 misspelled eleemosynary, leaving Daniel and one remaining challenger to determine the championship. We move now to our championship words, the announcer explained. Each competitor will receive up to 3 words of championship-level difficulty. The first to spell a word correctly while their opponent misspells a word will be declared champion. Lisa Merritt Wiedenez, Daniel's final opponent, approached the microphone with confident poise. At 9 years old, she had competed nationally twice before and carried herself with the assurance of experience. Competitor number 19, Lisa Martinez, your word is dilatomy. Lisa demonstrated her competitive skill with a flawless spelling, returning to her seat with a friendly nod toward Daniel. Competitor number 37, Daniel Reynolds, your word is zoanthropy. Daniel repeated the process that had served him throughout the competition, requesting definition and etymology, visualizing the word in his mind, and then spelling with careful precision. zoanthropy, zoanthropy. Correct. The tension mounted as both competitors successfully navigated their second championship words, Lisa spelling catafalque and Daniel conquering dactylology without hesitation. Ladies and gentlemen, we now proceed to the final championship words. The announcer declared, if both spellers correctly spell their words, we will continue with additional words until we have a champion. Lisa approached the microphone for her third word, her confident demeanor showing the first signs of pressure as fatigue from the marathon competition began to set in. Competitor number 19, Lisa Martinez, your word is eudaimonistic. Lisa requested the definition and etymology, then took a deep breath before spelling eudemonistic. Eudaimonistic. A moment of silence, then, I'm sorry, that is incorrect. The correct spelling is eudeimonistic. Lisa nodded graciously, the disappointment in her expression tempered by the sportsmanship that characterized the competition. The audience applauded her remarkable performance as she stepped away from the microphone. Competitor number 37, Daniel Reynolds. If you correctly spell this word, you will be the champion of the 8-year-old division. Your word is pharmacognosy. The audience fell completely silent. In the third row, Olivia Reynolds held her breath, while Michael gripped Elijah's hand with excitement so intense it approached anxiety. Daniel stood at the microphone, his slight frame somehow containing both the vulnerability of a child who had faced cruelty just 24 hours earlier and the extraordinary resilience that had transformed that experience into fuel for achievement. Pharmacognosy, he repeated, the syllables clear and measured. May I have the definition, please? The branch of knowledge concerned with the medicinal drugs obtained from plants or other natural sources. Daniel nodded, a flicker of recognition crossing his features. This was a word he had encountered during his preparation, one of the thousands he had committed to memory through disciplined study and visualization techniques. PHAMACOGNOSY, pharmacognosy. The judge consulted her reference, then looked up with a warm smile. That is correct. Congratulations, Daniel Reynolds, you are the champion. The audience erupted in thunderous applause, with Michael's voice rising above all others in joyous celebration. Olivia remained seated for just a moment, overwhelmed by emotion as she watched her son's triumph. This wasn't just a spelling competition victory. It was a profound statement about resilience, about refusing to be diminished by cruelty, about rising above trauma to achieve excellence. As Daniel accepted the championship trophy, a gleaming crystal cup nearly half his height, the mark on his cheek caught the stage lights. What Catherine Brooks had intended as a gesture of humiliation had instead become a badge of honor, visible evidence of a challenge faced and overcome through dignity and determination. The award ceremony concluded with photographs of all divisional winners, the 3 Reynolds brothers together again as they posed with Daniel's trophy. Their matching navy Burberry blazers and identical features created a striking image that would appear on local news broadcasts that evening. 3 young black boys exhibiting excellence and dignity in the aftermath of a racially charged assault that had captured national attention. Mom? Daniel asked as they finally left the competition venue, his trophy carefully secured in its custom-made protective case. What happens next with Ms. Brooks? Will there be a trial? Olivia considered how to frame the legal process in terms her sons could understand without burdening them with adult complexities. The district attorney will decide exactly what charges to file. There might be a trial, or Ms. Brooks might accept responsibility through what's called a plea agreement. Either way, there will be appropriate consequences for her actions. Will we have to see her again? Michael asked, his natural optimism momentarily overshadowed by concern. Not unless you choose to, Olivia assured him. The legal system has protections in place for children involved in cases like this. A victim advocate would represent your interests. Elijah, always focused on practical matters, posed the question that had been forming in his analytical mind. Mom, will what happened help other kids? Will it make things better for people who get treated badly because of how they look? The question touched the heart of what had been unfolding in Olivia's strategic planning since the incident occurred. Yes, Elijah, Premium Airways is already developing new policies to better protect all passengers, especially children, and the public response to what happened is creating important conversations about accountability. So something good came from something bad. Michael summarized with his characteristic ability to find silver linings. Just like how Daniel's mark helped him remember to be brave during the competition. Exactly, Olivia confirmed, drawing her sons close as they walked toward their waiting transportation. And your triumph today sends a powerful message about not letting anyone's cruelty define who you are or what you can achieve. As they departed the competition venue, they remained unaware of the media storm building around Catherine Brooks. Her arrest and subsequent release on bail had triggered intense scrutiny of her past behavior. Former household staff had come forward with accounts of similar racist incidents, while social acquaintances distanced themselves with public statements condemning her actions. Richard Brooks, facing both personal humiliation and professional repercussions as clients questioned their association with his venture capital firm, had issued a statement expressing deep regret for his wife's inexcusable behavior and announcing her enrollment in an intensive residential therapy program specializing in anger management and bias recognition. The Brooks family's carefully constructed social world was collapsing with remarkable speed. Country club memberships suspended, board positions resigned, charity gala invitations rescinded. The consequences Catherine had never anticipated when she struck a child in first class were radiating through every aspect of her privileged existence, creating a very public lesson in accountability that would follow her for years to come. But these developments remained peripheral to the Reynolds family's focus as they returned to their hotel to celebrate Daniel's victory. This evening would be about achievement, not about the incident that had preceded it. Tomorrow would bring decisions about legal proceedings and corporate policies. But tonight belonged to three remarkable young boys who had demonstrated that excellence was the most powerful response to prejudice. Champions. Olivia addressed her sons as they gathered in their hotel suite that evening. I have never been prouder of you than I am right now, not just because of Daniel's trophy, but because of how all three of you handled yourselves through an extremely difficult situation. We remembered what you taught us, Mom, Elijah replied solemnly, about dignity and determination, the Reynolds family principles, items 4 and 7 in our code, and about helping each other, Michael added, his arm draped across Daniel's shoulders, because we're stronger together than apart. Daniel, still holding his trophy with careful reverence, looked up at his mother with an expression of dawning understanding beyond his years. Mom, I think I figured something out today. What's that, sweetheart? When that lady hit me, she thought she was showing her power. But real power isn't about hurting people or making them feel small. Olivia knelt to meet her son's eyes directly. What is real power? Daniel, it's knowing who you are and not letting anyone take that away from you. He answered with quiet certainty. It's standing up again after something knocks you down. Dr. Patterson calls it integrated identity resilience. The profound wisdom in her 8-year-old statement brought tears to Olivia's eyes, genuine emotion breaking through her carefully maintained composure. Daniel Reynolds, that might be the most important lesson anyone could ever learn, and you discovered it all on your own. As the Reynolds family celebrated Daniel's championship with room service ice cream and video calls to excited grandparents, the events aboard Flight 823 continued generating ripples through both the justice system and the corporate world. Catherine Brooks's actions had triggered consequences far beyond her comprehension when she had struck out in entitled rage, consequences that would eventually transform airline policies, passenger protections, and public understanding of accountability. But the most powerful transformation had already occurred within Daniel himself. visible in the quiet confidence with which he held his championship trophy, in the healing mark on his cheek that now represented triumph rather than victimization, and in the profound understanding that true power resided not in the ability to inflict pain, but in the capacity to rise above it with dignity and excellence. Part 7: Aftermath and Transformation. Catherine Brooks sat alone in the small conference room of the Hamilton and Associates law firm, her Prada Saffiano leather handbag clutched tightly in white-knuckled hands. The polished mahogany table reflected her haggard appearance, designer clothes now rumpled, makeup hastily applied, eyes reddened from a night in county lockup before her bail hearing. The situation is extremely serious. Mrs. Brooks, Attorney James Hamilton stated, his tone clinical as he reviewed the documents spread before him. At 62, Hamilton had built his career defending the wealthy from consequences of their indiscretions, but even his experienced eyes registered concern as he assessed the case details. The evidence against you is exceptionally strong. It was a tap, barely made contact, Catherine insisted, though her voice lacked the conviction it had carried during the incident. The child was being deliberately provocative, and no one was addressing the situation. You know how these people can be when they're trying to make everything about race. Hamilton's expression remained professionally neutral, but his hand stopped mid-motion on the legal pad where he'd been taking notes. Mrs. Brooks, I've reviewed the preliminary evidence, including multiple witness statements and video documentation from 17 different angles. The contact was significant enough to dislodge the child's glasses and leave a visible mark that was still evident during medical examination conducted too. 7 hours after the incident, those people were all against me from the start, Catherine protested, desperation edging into her voice. They sided with those children simply because. I strongly advise you not to complete that sentence, Hamilton interrupted, recognizing the racial comment forming. Particularly not in my presence or anyone else's. Everything you say, even in presumed confidence, could potentially become part of discovery if this proceeds to trial. The clinical assessment silenced Catherine momentarily, the reality of her situation beginning to penetrate the protective bubble of entitlement that had insulated her throughout adult life. What am I facing? She finally asked, her voice smaller than before. The district attorney's office has filed formal charges of assault on a minor under Georgia Code Section 16523-1. They're also considering federal charges related to interference with flight crew and potential hate crime enhancements based on the racial component of the incident. Hate crime, Catherine's voice rose in panic. That's absurd. I'm not some sort of... Mrs. Brooks, Hamilton interrupted again, his tone sharpening. Multiple witnesses have provided statements indicating you made several comments with clear racial undertones prior to the physical assault. Comments about certain people knowing their place and references to the children not belonging in first class. The social media documentation alone includes 27 distinct racially charged statements made over a 37-minute period. Catherine fell silent, the methodical dismantling of her defenses progressing with merciless efficiency. If convicted on all potential charges, you face up to 3 years in prison, fines exceeding $50,000, and the permanent record of a felony conviction that would impact your ability to travel internationally, vote, or maintain membership in various professional and social organizations. The color drained from Catherine's face as the consequences materialized in concrete terms. Prison, actual prison like Rikers Island. That's a realistic possibility, yes. The Georgia corrections system maintains several facilities that would be substantially different from your usual accommodations at the Four Seasons. But I'm not. I've never... She struggled to articulate the protest forming in her mind that people like her didn't go to prison, that her wealth and connections had always insulated her from such consequences. There's also the matter of civil liability, Hamilton continued, unmoved by her distress. Premium Airways has already indicated they intend to pursue damages for violation of their passenger agreement, and the Reynolds family has grounds for a substantial personal injury claim that early estimates place between $1.7 and $2.3 million. Richard will handle that, Catherine said dismissively, retreating to the familiar territory of financial solutions to personal problems. Whatever it costs to make this go away, Hamilton's expression tightened, the crow's feet around his eyes deepening. Mrs. Brooks, I've spoken with your husband. While he's committed to ensuring you have legal representation, He's made it clear that there are limits to the financial support he's willing to provide for what he termed indefensible behavior. His exact words were, "She created this catastrophe alone. She can navigate the consequences with limited draws on our joint accounts." But this revelation struck Catherine with physical force, her body actually recoiling as though from a blow. Richard had always been her safety net, cleaning up messes, smoothing over conflicts, maintaining the carefully constructed facade of their perfect life. "He can't possibly mean that," she whispered. 23 years of marriage, and he's going to abandon me over one misunderstanding, after everything I've done for his social standing. "I believe Mr. Brooks views this as considerably more than a misunderstanding," Hamilton replied with careful neutrality. The public nature of the incident and the resulting media attention have created significant professional complications for him. Several clients have already contacted his firm, expressing concerns about their continued relationship. Whitfield Partners has lost 2 limited partners representing $78 million in committed capital since the incident. Catherine's world contracted further, the protective layers of privilege peeling away to reveal the harsh reality underneath. Richard's priorities had always been clear: business first, reputation second, marriage a distant third. If her actions threatened the first two, the third would be sacrificed without hesitation. "What are my options?" she asked. Vulnerability replacing defiance for the first time. "We can pursue several strategies," Hamilton explained, his tone softening slightly as he recognized the psychological shift occurring before him. "A plea agreement would likely involve probation, 500 hours of community service, and mandatory anger management and bias recognition therapy. In exchange, the district attorney might agree to reduce charges to a misdemeanor rather than a felony. And if we don't pursue a plea, then we prepare for trial with all the public exposure and uncertainty that entails. The jury pool would see 17 different videos of the incident from all angles, hear testimony from 37 witnesses, and review medical documentation of the child's injuries." Hamilton's professional assessment was unambiguous. "Given the evidence, including multiple videos and witness statements, I would not recommend that approach. The conviction rate for cases with this level of documentation exceeds 97.3%. Catherine nodded numbly, the full weight of consequences settling upon her. The night in county lockup had been a nightmare beyond her comprehension. The indignities of booking procedures, the physical discomfort of the holding cell, the overwhelming sensory assault of an environment she had never imagined experiencing firsthand. What about the Reynolds family?" she asked hesitantly. "Is there any way to approach them directly?" "Absolutely not," Hamilton responded with sudden sharpness. "Your bail conditions explicitly prohibit any contact with the victims. Furthermore, any attempt at communication could be interpreted as witness intimidation, which would add additional charges carrying up to 10 years of incarceration." Catherine nodded again, retreating into silence as the walls of her privileged world continued to collapse around her. Beyond the legal consequences looming before her, social fallout was already spreading through her carefully curated life. Her phone had been confiscated during arrest, but even in the brief period since its return, she had discovered multiple messages from social connections distancing themselves, charitable organizations requesting her resignation from their boards, and country club administrators expressing concerns about her continued membership. The invisible fortress of privilege that had protected her throughout life was revealing its true fragility, not gradually eroding but catastrophically collapsing under the weight of accountability, finally, irrevocably imposed. As Catherine confronted the ruins of her social standing, Olivia Reynolds was leveraging the incident to create systemic change that would extend far beyond one family's experience. In a conference room at Premium Airways Atlanta Operations Center, Olivia addressed her executive leadership team with the dual authority of the CEO and mother, a powerful combination that rendered her vision both personal and professionally unassailable. "The incident aboard Flight 823 has revealed critical gaps in our passenger protection protocols," she stated, her voice carrying the same precision that had confronted Catherine Brooks at 30,000 feet. "While our crew responded admirably to the situation, we have an opportunity and an obligation to develop more robust preventative measures." Michael Peterson, Chief Operations Officer, nodded in agreement. "The response team has already begun reviewing all documentation from the incident, Initial findings suggest several points where intervention might have occurred earlier in the interaction. Exactly, Olivia confirmed. And that's why I'm proposing the immediate development of the Reynolds Protocol, a comprehensive passenger protection framework focusing particularly on unaccompanied minors. Regardless of cabin class, she activated the presentation display, revealing detailed flowcharts of proposed procedural changes, training requirements, and implementation timelines. The Reynolds Protocol will include enhanced crew training for identifying potential conflict scenarios, expanded authority for immediate intervention when vulnerable passengers are involved, and integration with our existing security systems to ensure rapid response when incidents do occur. We're looking at a $7.3 million initial implementation budget with ongoing annual costs of approximately $1.2 million. Sarah Jenkins, Chief Customer Experience Officer, leaned forward with evident enthusiasm. Dr. Reynolds, this framework addresses several concerns we've been discussing for months. The incident, while deeply unfortunate, provides compelling justification for accelerating these improvements. Olivia acknowledged this with a nod. Sometimes meaningful change requires a catalyst. What happened to my son was unacceptable on every level. But if we can transform that experience into protection for thousands of other children, then something valuable will have emerged from it. The executive team proceeded through a detailed review of the proposed protocol, with Olivia maintaining her characteristic balance of visionary leadership and pragmatic implementation planning. By meeting's end, they had established an aggressive timeline for rollout across Premium Airways' entire operation. Crew training to begin within 2 weeks, system updates to follow within 30 days, full implementation across the fleet within 90 days. As they prepared to adjourn, David Richardson, Chief Legal Officer, raised one final point. Dr. Reynolds, the District Attorney's Office has requested a meeting regarding the charges against Ms. Brooks. They're particularly interested in your perspective on appropriate consequences. Olivia considered this carefully, the CEO momentarily yielding to the mother as she reflected on what justice would truly mean in this situation. Schedule the meeting for tomorrow morning. My primary concern is ensuring that the outcome creates meaningful deterrence while also addressing the underlying issues that led to Ms. Brooks' behavior. And the civil liability, David pressed gently. Premium Airways has grounds for substantial damages, as does your family personally. Early estimates place potential damages between $1.7 and $2.3 million. Any financial penalties should be directed toward prevention and education, Olivia decided. I have no interest in punitive damages beyond what's necessary to fund systemic improvements. Direct all compensation toward establishing the Reynolds Foundation for Inclusive Transportation. This response, prioritizing transformation over retribution, reflected the leadership philosophy that had elevated Olivia Reynolds to her position of authority and the maternal wisdom that guided her most important decisions. As the meeting concluded, Olivia checked her phone to find multiple messages from the triplets' hotel room, where they remained under the watchful care of Premium Airways security personnel. The most recent was a photo of all 3 boys holding Daniel's championship trophy, their identical faces beaming with pride and accomplishment. The image brought tears to Olivia's eyes, not of sorrow or lingering anger, but of profound gratitude for her son's resilience and their ability to triumph over adversity with dignity and tact. Meanwhile, the Reynolds triplets were experiencing their own transformation in the aftermath of both trauma and triumph. Do you think Mom will let us get ice cream to celebrate? Michael asked, bouncing on the hotel bed with characteristic energy. She already ordered it, Elijah replied, pointing to the room service menu on the nightstand. I heard her talking to the hotel before she left for her meeting. Triple chocolate with extra sprinkles. 1 hour after dinner. Daniel sat cross-legged on the floor, his spelling trophy beside him as he organized his competition materials with meticulous care. The mark on his cheek had faded to a barely perceptible shadow, but the internal changes catalyzed by the experience remained far more significant. Daniel, Michael called, pausing in his bouncing. Are you okay? You're being extra quiet. I've counted only 37 words from you since we got back, which is 73.4% below your normal rate. Daniel looked up, his expression thoughtful rather than troubled. I'm okay. I'm just thinking about everything that happened. Elijah joined him on the floor, the protective instinct that defined his relationship with his brothers evident in his attentive posture. Thinking about the bad part or the good part? Both, I guess, Daniel answered. When that lady hit me, it was like everything stopped for a second. Like I couldn't believe someone would do that just because they didn't think I belonged somewhere. Michael slid off the bed to complete their circle, the three identical boys forming a tight unit of mutual support. But you do belong. We all do. Anywhere we choose to be. I know that, Daniel agreed. Mom always made sure we knew that. But knowing it inside and having someone try to take it away are different feelings. Elijah nodded, his young face showing understanding beyond his years. And then what happened? Then Mom showed up, Daniel continued, a smile warming his serious expression. And she didn't yell or get crazy. She just fixed things, made everything right again. Mom is basically a superhero, Michael declared with absolute conviction, except instead of a cape. She has those awesome suits with the gold pin. This observation triggered laughter from all three brothers, the shared humor strengthening the bonds that had supported them through challenge and triumph alike. But you know what I realized? Daniel continued once their laughter subsided. That lady thought she was showing her power when she hit me, but real power wasn't what she did. Real power was Mom, Michael suggested. Yes, but not just because she's CEO, Daniel clarified, articulating the understanding that had been forming in his mind since the competition. Real power was all of us keeping our dignity. Real power was me going on that stage today even though I was scared. Real power was spelling that championship word correctly even with everyone staring at my face. Elijah placed his hand on Daniel's shoulder, pride evident in his expression. That's exactly what Mom always says. Excellence is the best response to people who try to make you feel small. And we were excellent today, Michael added, retrieving the trophy and placing it in the center of their circle. All of us. The brothers sat in comfortable silence. Three identical boys processing shared experience through their distinct perspectives, Elijah the protector, Daniel the thinker, Michael the heart. Though they shared the same face, the events of the past 24 hours had highlighted their individual strengths while reinforcing their unbreakable connection. When Olivia returned to the hotel room an hour later, she found her sons engaged in an impromptu spelling bee, with Michael serving as pronouncer while Daniel and Elijah competed with increasingly obscure technical terms. Champions, she greeted them, setting aside her executive demeanor as she joined their circle on the floor. I hear there's ice cream on the way to celebrate. Yeah, triple chocolate or with extra sprinkles, Michael confirmed with enthusiasm. Daniel picked because he's the champion, but he chose all our favorites. Of course he did, Olivia acknowledged with a smile. That's what champions do. They lift everyone around them. As the Reynolds family celebrated together, miles away in a substantially less comfortable setting, Catherine Brooks faced the continued unraveling of her privileged existence. Her husband had departed after a brief, tense meeting with her attorney, leaving her to contemplate a future fundamentally altered by a single moment of unchecked entitlement and racism. In the weeks that followed, these parallel narratives would continue their divergent paths, the Reynolds family transforming trauma into triumph and catalyst for change, while Catherine Brooks navigated the bitter consequences of accountability, finally irrevocably imposed. The justice system proceeded with methodical precision, neither accelerated nor impeded by the parties' respective social positions. Catherine ultimately accepted a plea agreement that included 18 months of probation, 400 hours of community service in underserved communities, and mandatory participation in an intensive bias recognition program. The felony charge was reduced to a misdemeanor, sparing her imprisonment but still creating a permanent criminal record that would follow her through life. The civil settlement, negotiated between legal teams, directed $2.75 million to the newly established Reynolds Foundation for Inclusive Transportation, an organization dedicated to ensuring safe, respectful travel experiences for all passengers, with particular focus on children traveling alone and passengers from marginalized communities. Premium Airways implemented the Reynolds Protocol across its entire operation within the promised 90 days, with industry publications noting the comprehensive approach to passenger protection. Within 6 months, 17 other major carriers had adopted similar frameworks, creating a ripple effect that transformed passenger safety standards throughout the aviation industry. The most profound transformation, however, occurred not in corporate policies or legal precedents, but in the life of a quiet 8-year-old boy who had faced cruelty with dignity and emerged with both a championship trophy and an unshakable understanding of his own worth. Daniel Reynolds, spelling champion and unexpected catalyst for industry-wide change, returned to school with a quiet confidence that impressed teachers and classmates alike. The experience that might have diminished a less resilient child had instead revealed his extraordinary strength, not just intellectual but moral and emotional as well. "Mom," he said one evening as Olivia helped him prepare for a school presentation, "I'm not angry at that lady anymore." "Ms. Brooks," Olivia clarified, careful to use the proper name rather than dehumanizing language. Daniel nodded. "I was scared when it happened. And then I was angry for a while, but now I mostly feel sorry for her." "Sorry?" Olivia asked, genuinely curious about her son's evolving perspective. She must be really sad inside to be so mean to someone she didn't even know. Daniel explained with the simple wisdom of childhood. And now her whole life is different because of one bad choice. That seems like a really hard lesson. Olivia regarded her son with wonder, recognizing that his capacity for empathy exceeded many adults she encountered in boardrooms and executive suites. "That's a very compassionate way to look at it. Daniel, how did you come to that understanding?" He considered this question with characteristic thoughtfulness. I guess because when she hit me, she was trying to make me feel small, but instead, I ended up discovering how strong I really am. So in a weird way, her bad choice helped me learn something important about myself." Olivia pulled her son into an embrace, emotion momentarily overcoming her professional composure. This child, this remarkable, resilient, compassionate child, had transformed a moment of cruelty into an opportunity for growth, extracting wisdom from trauma with a grace that humbled her. "Daniel Reynolds," she whispered against his hair, "you have taught me as much as I have ever taught you." And in that quiet moment of connection between mother and son, the true measure of triumph became clear. Not the professional consequences implemented or the legal accountability imposed, but the human capacity to rise above cruelty with dignity intact and wisdom gained, the most powerful response possible to those who would diminish others to elevate themselves. 6 months after the incident aboard Flight 823, the landscape had transformed for all involved in ways both visible and profound. Catherine Brooks sat alone at a small desk in the community center's back office, organizing registration forms for the after-school program that constituted part of her court-mandated community service. The Valentino blouse and Prada slacks that had replaced her former designer wardrobe looked oddly formal in the utilitarian setting, like artifacts from a previous life. The past 6 months had dismantled her life with remarkable thoroughness. Richard had filed for a divorce 3 weeks after her court appearance, citing irreconcilable differences in documents that became fodder for social media speculation. The prenuptial agreement she had signed 23 years earlier proved devastatingly effective at protecting his assets, leaving her with a settlement that, while substantial by average standards, about $7 million, represented a dramatic downgrade from the lifestyle she had once taken for granted. The Brookhaven Country Club had revoked her membership following an emergency board meeting that lasted precisely 47 minutes. 3 charitable organizations had requested her immediate resignation with nearly identical letters citing conduct inconsistent with our values. Former social connections had evaporated with stunning speed, their text messages and calls vanishing as completely as if they had never existed. What remained was the court-mandated community service, 400 hours at a youth center in a predominantly Black neighborhood, which had initially seemed like the ultimate humiliation to Catherine. But something unexpected had happened during those hours. For the first time in her life, she was judged solely on her actions, not her wealth or connections. "Ms. Brooks, can you help me with this math problem?" Jamal Washington, a bright 10-year-old with a passion for engineering, approached her desk with worksheet in hand. 6 months ago, Catherine would have dismissed such a request with contempt. Now, she gestured to the chair beside her desk. "Show me where you're stuck, Jamal." As they worked through the problem together, Catherine experienced the quiet satisfaction of being useful, a feeling that had rarely penetrated her previous existence of entitled consumption and social positioning. She would never be the hero of this story, nor should she be. Her journey from entitled racist to someone capable of recognizing the humanity in others offered its own kind of redemption arc, not for public celebration, but for personal reckoning with the damage her worldview had caused. "I got it," Jamal exclaimed as the solution became clear. "Thanks, Mrs. Brooks. You explain things differently than my teacher, but it makes more sense your way." Catherine nodded, accepting the simple gratitude with newfound humility. Sometimes we need to look at problems from a different perspective to find the right answer. The irony of this statement wasn't lost on her. It applied far more to her own life's journey than to Jamal's math equation. The perspective shift forced upon her by accountability had revealed truths about herself and society that privilege had previously hidden from view. As Jamal returned to the main activity room, Catherine's phone buzzed with a news alert, one of dozens that had appeared over the past 6 months regarding what the media had dubbed the first-class incident. This one announced the industry-wide implementation of the Reynolds Protocol, now adopted by 27 major carriers worldwide. The changes triggered by her moment of unchecked rage had extended far beyond her individual life, creating ripples of transformation throughout an entire industry. There was a certain cosmic justice in this outcome. Her attempt to diminish a child had instead elevated protections for countless children traveling alone. Catherine closed the alert without reading the full article. The constant reminders of her public disgrace had become less painful over time, not because the shame had diminished, but because she had begun the difficult work of accepting responsibility rather than seeking escapes from it. Meanwhile, in the executive offices of Premium Airways headquarters, Olivia Reynolds was reviewing quarterly results with her leadership team. The implementation of the Reynolds Protocol had initially raised questions about potential negative impacts on passenger experience and operational costs. 6 months later, the data told a different story. Customer satisfaction scores have increased 23.7 points quarter over quarter. Jennifer Maritweet-Inez, the new Chief Customer Experience Officer, reported with evident satisfaction. Specific improvements appear in the inclusive environment and crew responsiveness categories, with Net Promoter Scores rising from 67.3 to 83.9. And operationally, Olivia prompted, already knowing the answer but wanting her team to recognize the connection. Incident response costs have decreased 47.3% compared to the same period last year. Michael Peterson confirmed. The proactive intervention strategies are preventing escalations that previously required expensive emergency responses and reaccommodations. We've recorded 127 successful early interventions using the new protocol. Olivia nodded, allowing herself a moment of quiet pride in what they had accomplished. The data confirms what we've always believed, that creating safer, more inclusive environments isn't just ethically right, it's good business. The Reynolds Protocol had transformed from crisis response to industry standard with remarkable speed. Its comprehensive approach to passenger protection, receiving recognition from consumer advocacy groups, regulatory agencies, and industry publications. "Dr. Reynolds," her assistant called from the doorway, "your son's school just called. They've been selected as student representatives for the National Science Competition in Washington." "All three?" Olivia asked, though she already knew the answer. The triplets' academic excellence continued to manifest across multiple disciplines, their confidence strengthened rather than diminished by the challenges they had faced. "Yes, all three." The principal specifically mentioned that Daniel's research project on stress response in educational environments received special recognition from the selection committee. Olivia smiled, maternal pride momentarily eclipsing professional focus. Daniel had transformed his personal experience with anxiety into a sophisticated research project examining how stress affected learning outcomes, converting challenge into opportunity with characteristic thoughtfulness. "Please clear my schedule for the competition dates," she instructed, "and arrange for the family jet rather than commercial travel." This departure from her usual insistence on regular commercial flights for family travel reflected not privilege but protection, a mother's prerogative to shield her children from unnecessary stress while they focused on their next achievement. As her team continued reviewing quarterly results, Olivia's thoughts drifted briefly to the Reynolds Foundation for Inclusive Transportation, established with the civil settlement funds from Catherine Brooks, under the direction of Dr. Marcus Johnson, a renowned child psychologist specializing in trauma response. The foundation had already trained 2,842 flight attendants across multiple airlines in techniques for identifying and addressing potential conflict situations before they escalated. The incident that had been meant to humiliate her son had instead spawned a movement for change that extended far beyond one family or one airline, a powerful testament to what could be accomplished when accountability was properly imposed and constructively channeled. Later that evening, in the Reynolds family home, the triplets gathered around the dining room table that had once served as their spelling competition headquarters. Now covered with scientific diagrams and research materials, it had transformed into command central for their next academic pursuit. "Mom, can you look at my presentation slides?" Daniel asked, his tablet displaying a meticulously organized research summary. "I want to make sure the data visualization is clear enough for the judges." Olivia joined her sons at the table, seamlessly transitioning from CEO to mother as she had done countless times throughout their lives. "Let me see what you've created." Oh, Daniel's project examined how different classroom environments affected student anxiety levels and academic performance, a subject he now understood from both personal experience and scholarly research. His findings suggested that supportive communities significantly reduce the impact of stressful events on learning outcomes, a conclusion that aligned perfectly with what he had experienced during the spelling competition. "This is excellent work, Daniel," Olivia praised, reviewing his methodology and conclusions with genuine respect for his academic rigor. "Your personal connection to the subject matter strengthens your research rather than biasing it." "That's what Dr. Patterson said too," Daniel replied, referencing his therapist who had helped him process the aircraft incident and its aftermath. "She said sometimes our challenges give us unique insights that other researchers might miss. Like when Peterson wouldn't call on me in math class even though I knew the answers." Elijah contributed, connecting current research to a previous experience. "Now I can see the pattern statistically, not just emotionally." "Do you ever think about what happened on the plane?" Michael asked, setting aside his own project, a chemical analysis of stress hormones in different learning environments. "Does it still bother you?" Daniel considered the question with characteristic thoughtfulness. "Sometimes I remember it, but it doesn't feel scary anymore. It just feels like something that happened that taught me important things." "What things?" Michael asked, his natural curiosity engaged. "That most people are good, even when some aren't. That mom will always protect us, but also that we can handle hard things ourselves. And that something can lead to something good if you respond the right way." Olivia listened to her son's wisdom with profound gratitude. The incident that could have diminished him had instead revealed his extraordinary strength, not just intellectual, but moral and emotional as well. "Do you know what I'm most proud of?" she asked, including all three boys in her gaze. "Not the spelling championship or these incredible science projects. Though those achievements are remarkable, I'm most proud of how you maintained your dignity throughout a challenging situation, and how you've transformed that experience into wisdom and compassion rather than fear or resentment." The triplets absorbed this praise with varying reactions characteristic of their distinct personalities, Elijah with serious acknowledgement, Daniel with thoughtful appreciation, Michael with beaming enthusiasm. "Ms. Wilson from school said something similar," Elijah shared. "She said that how we respond to injustice says more about our character than the achievements we earn when everything's easy." "Miss Wilson is very wise," Olivia agreed. "And you three have demonstrated character far beyond your years." As they returned to their projects, the conversation shifting to technical details and competition logistics, Olivia reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. The incident aboard Flight 823 had been painful and infuriating, but its aftermath had revealed the extraordinary resilience her sons possessed, and the powerful impact that could be achieved when accountability and transformation aligned. The changes implemented through the Reynolds Protocol would protect countless children traveling alone, creating safer experiences for families across the nation and beyond. The foundation established with settlement funds would continue advancing inclusive transportation practices long after the news cycle had moved on to other stories. But the most significant transformation had occurred within Daniel himself. The quiet middle triplet, whose anxiety had once seemed like vulnerability, but had revealed itself as a unique form of strength. His ability to process trauma, extract wisdom, and channel that understanding into both academic excellence and personal growth represented the true triumph emerging from that difficult day. As Catherine Brooks completed another hour of community service, as airline crews implemented new protective protocols, as industry standards evolved in response to a single incident, Daniel Reynolds prepared to share his research with the world, transforming personal pain into knowledge that could help others navigate their own challenges. In that quiet moment of family connection, mother and sons gathered around a table covered with evidence of their shared values and individual brilliance. The true measure of victory became clear. Not in the punishments imposed or the policies implemented, but in the human capacity to rise from challenge with dignity intact and wisdom gained. Daniel looked up from his tablet, meeting his mother's gaze with the quiet confidence that had blossomed in the aftermath of adversity. "Mom, I think I'm ready for Washington." Olivia smiled, her heart full of love and pride for all three of her remarkable sons. "You've been ready all along, champions. You've been ready all along." The Reynolds family's journey from trauma to triumph stood as powerful testimony to resilience, dignity, and the transformative potential of responding to cruelty not with vengeance, but with excellence. Their story would continue inspiring others long after the incident that had brought them to national attention, not as victims of discrimination, but as architects of positive change and embodiments of the principle that true power resided not in the ability to harm others, but in the strength to rise above harm with character and purpose intact. Sometimes, the most powerful response to those who would diminish you is not retaliation, but elevation. Rising so far beyond their attempt to limit you that their actions become merely footnotes in your story of achievement and growth. For Daniel Reynolds, spelling champion and catalyst for industry-wide change, that elevation had only just begun. The mark on his cheek had long since faded, but the inner strength it had revealed would continue shaping his path forward and inspiring others to find similar strength within themselves when facing their own moments of challenge. In that truth lay the most important lesson of all, that dignity, determination, and excellence could transform even the most painful experiences into catalysts for growth and positive change. A lesson that would serve the Reynolds brothers throughout their lives and touch countless others through their example of triumph over adversity. If you found this story inspiring, please like and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing these powerful stories of resilience and justice. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that dignity always prevails over discrimination, and that excellence is the ultimate response to those who try to diminish us. Remember to ring the notification bell to stay updated on our latest videos, and drop a comment below sharing your own experiences of overcoming adversity. Together, we're building a community that celebrates triumph over injustice and proves that our dignity can never be taken away, only strengthened through challenges.